Mr. Aaron Mtswaledi, Deputy Minister Njabulo, and our entire team. I'll request first, Mr. Matonzi, to flag the agenda for the meeting so that we were all of us familiar with the proceeding of today's portfolio committee meeting.
Can you see it, Chairperson?
No, I can't, Mr. Matonzi. We can't see it.
You can't see. I don't know what's going on. Adam? Adam?
I can see it from my side, Chair.
There we can see it from
you can see it.
Chair.
Yeah, just zoom a little bit and make it full screen.
Noted, colleagues. I've noted that you can see it. I can see it. Thank you.
Can you see it, Mr. Chairman? No.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Matonzi and Mr. Adams. We know that Honorable Mutise and Minister Mtswaledi can see clearly the agenda. Colleagues, this agenda for today will be running the second item. We'll be running apologies. The apologies also run in introduction of Minister Ndabeni Abrams will introduce a team. Minister Mtswaledi will also introduce a team. We'll run on the fourth item. The fourth item is as outlined, 4.1 and 4.2. Then we'll go to the last item. It will be, after presentation, obviously, there'll be interaction and comments from members. And after 4.6, there's going to be an item there, Mr. Matonzi, on the update and preparations for the portfolio committee oversight at government printing work. You'll take us through on the preparations and the schedule of tomorrow. And that item, if the team of Mr. Abrams will be requested to be released. We are all welcome, as I indicated earlier. It's an Africa Day today. We all confine ourselves to the historical account in relation to this day. And members, you'll be interacting with the report as per your decision in the last meeting that the two departments must interact and come back to the committee to present on the progress made and the implementation thereof of the issues which were raised by members of the committee. Mr. Matonzi, I want to draw you to the second item on the apologies, and then we'll take also introduction. We'll take also introduction from Minister Stella Ndabeni Abrams and go to Minister Aaron Mtswaledi. Mr. Matonzi?
Okay, Chair. I've got an apology from Advocate Bongo. I think that's the only apology, except and the Deputy Minister of Communication. She sent an apology yesterday. That's all, Chairperson.
Thank you. Can I invite Minister?
Chairperson, sorry.
Okay, sorry. Co-chair.
Yes, sorry, Chairperson. I will unfortunately leave at 10 to participate in the social development budget vote. I just wanted to make that input so that you know that I won't be around. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Co-chair, and good luck on your participation. Ministers, any other apology, members, before I invite our colleagues? Thank you. We'll record the apology of Chairperson Advocate Bongo and Co-Chair Honorable Zell. Minister Stella Abrams.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, the members of the committee. I'm not sure why the minister's apology was not recorded, but I would like to put the apology for the minister as well. She has another portfolio committee and the other roundtable that she will be participating on this morning. My name is Mlindi Mashulogo. I am the DDG in the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. So I will be leading the team here today as an official. And also with me, Chair, it's Acting DDG Rendani Museta, who is from the SOE Oversight in the department. And we do also have Mr. Kotiwe from also SOE Oversight, as well as Ms. Anthony, who is our parliamentary liaison. And also I'd like to introduce the SITA team as well, that is led by Mr. Keise, who is the executive caretaker of SITA. I think he can just introduce his team as well from SITA side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll come back to your issues. Thank you. SITA.
Morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister Mutsualedi, Honorable Deputy Minister, and Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, as well as colleagues. If you allow me, Chair, can I then ask Tanya, we then load the slides. I will speak, Honorable Chair, on the slides, if we just allow Tanya to load, Chair. I'm assuming you can hear me, Chair.
Yeah, we're still on the apologies.
All right, thanks very much, Chair.
Yeah, we'll invite you we'll give indication for the invite for presentation.
Oh, okay. No, thank you. Thank you, Chair, for that. It's just to confirm we are here, Chair. And simply, Chair, all we will then do is to give an update to the committee in terms of what we were tasked to do last time. But since the minister is not here, I won't give the political feedback, but I will just respond to the slides. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Acting Chair of the meeting, the Minister of Communications is here. I request her to be excused on the other meeting. Hi, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chairperson.
Who's on the podium?
Stella Ndabeni Abrams.
Oh, okay. So we're getting indication that Minister of Communications is leading the delegation.
Yes, Honorable Chair. It's so okay. I did apologize on the other meeting, but I'm going to be leaving in an hour in order to address other things that Portfolio Committee.
Okay, thank you, Minister, for your consideration on this important day.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. We're going to invite Honorable Minister Mtsoaledi to introduce a team.
Thank you, Chairperson. I've got two teams here. One led by the DG, the Director General of the department. The other team will be from the forensic auditors. I'm sure DG will do the introductions of both. Let me leave it to the DG. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. DG.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, and good morning to both the ministers, Minister Mtsoaledi and the Minister Ndabeni Abrams, and honorable members. From our side, Chair, we're joined by Mr. Bilal Jetam from Nexia, SAB&T, and also Chantel Naidu. And then from the department, we're joined by DTG Mafuso, who's responsible for institutional planning and support, but also acting as DDG for information systems. And then we're joined by the CFO, Mr. Gordon Holambi, Mr. Vukani Ngasana, responsible for acting DDG counter-corruption, And then we're also joined by Mr. Harold Chilwane, the Chief Audit Executive, and lastly, DDG Sikama, responsible for civic. So that's our delegation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both Minister Stella Abrams and Minister Mtsoaledi, for introducing your teams and taking account of the apologies that were recorded. I'll invite Minister Stella Ndabeni Abrams to introduce the presentation, or at her delegation of introducing the presentation. Then after we'll go to Minister Motsoaledi to introduce the presentation, or at his delegation. And after that, members will interact with the report and will invite in that sequence for comments and account on the presentation made by both the departments and stakeholders which they are presiding over. Minister Stella Abrams, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, once more. And Chairperson and honorable members, thank you for affording us an opportunity to continue with the work as we started to come and brief the portfolio committee. Honorable members, as you will recall, that there was the burning issue that we needed to attend to in relation to the anomalies that happened in the way of delivering the service that we're expected to deliver. I'll just talk to the overview, and with your permission, Chairperson, allow the SITA EC to take us through. We assisted as SITA, we assisted the Department of Home Affairs with procurement, of course, of ABIS. And that was in 2017, as honorable members remember. The process that was followed had the different processes and phases. The request for accreditation process, which was concluded on the 12th September 2016. And of course, the request for proposal, a tender award stage, which concluded in July 2017. I'm just giving this brief background to remind members, but then whatever happened, I would like, with your permission, Chairperson, to invite the SITA executive caretaker. But as he's going to come, Chairperson, there's certain things that we'll not be able to go into detail on, of course, looking at the legalities of the matters that we are dealing with. The only issues that we won't be specific on, honorable members, is the issue of the names of the people mentioned in the report, but we will make reference to that has happened and the actions that we have taken. With your permission, Chair, allow me to invite Mr. Casey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Stella Ndabeni Abrams. As delegated, Mr. Casey.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thank you, ministers, both Minister Mtsoaledi and Minister Ndabeni Abrams. I will then ask that Tanya will then flight the slides. As the minister has explained, Honorable Chair, you would have a detailed annexure that has all the detailed information. I will not then be mentioning those names that are in the annexure, but will just give you a high-level view without naming people's names. So if we move to the next slide, Tanya. So it's more of an overview of the tender, which the minister has already done. But I think the key things we're here to account on, Honorable Chair, is progress on implementation of the recommendations. If we move to the next slide, the minister has already explained what the tender is all about, the processes that were followed. I think the committee is more than interested in, now that we have received the report of SABNT, what is it that then we have done? Indeed, SITA has also received its legal opinion on how we can then go further on implementing those recommendations. Then the specifics on the next slide, Honorable Chair. You would then know that we are confirming that indeed a criminal case has been opened for one of the people that are indicated in that report. And the case number is there without mentioning the names. And we can confirm, Honorable Chair, that we are also as SITA in engagement with the Hawks, and we have provided the Hawks all of the information around this contract. I did personally engage with the Hawks also last week, same as the Chief Audit Executive for SITA. But beyond that, beyond the criminal charges and supporting the Hawks in the investigation, we have also started the process of ensuring that we improve internal controls within SITA in line with the recommendations that have been made by ACBNT and of course other recommendations that have been made by AG within the system, including ensuring, as you'll know, the committee, one of the things that you have raised was the issue of SITA losing documents, and also officers not having documents for this tender. So we can confirm your electronic platforms to ensure that all tenders that SITA receives are within an electronic platform, a SharePoint you have implemented to ensure that we no longer go through the processes of losing documents. Now we can ensure that all tender documents will always be there and available. The checklist that should be done by SCM employees in line with the report to ensure basic things, the minutes of each and every meeting, the public opening of the bid, the minutes of each and every evaluation committee meeting that is done. So we manage all of those things. And to ensure now everything that we're doing, including the checklist, is also included into the electronic SharePoint platform that we have. We are using and we have launched a G-commerce system for automated tenders, meaning now submissions to tenders are already using your automated platform, and we can confirm to this portfolio committee, we've just finalized one of the contracts where more than 1,500 companies submitted a bid on one platform for one tender. So meaning we have stress tested the solution to ensure that it works, including some additional Oracle BI tools for contract management, to ensure we follow all of the processes that we need to do. These are some of the things that were raised within the SABNT report in terms of control improvements that we need to effect within the organization. We can confirm we have done that. You would also then understand the report also talks of possible disciplinary action that SITA needs to meet against some of its employees that are indicated there. We confirm in the detail annexure that you have, Chair, those members that are no longer within the employ of SITA, and we have gone through the legal process to see what is it that we have done against some of those employees, and a full investigation has been done in that case, where there is no financial loss within the employees that have left the organization. The legal advice that we have then received is that we can't take them through a disciplinary process. But if there is any financial loss that is uncovered as we continue with the process, we will then continue challenging those employees in line with the criminal case that has already been implemented, just as an example. For the 3 employees that are still within the employ of SITA, we are also in the process of consequence management for that. As the committee will understand, the only employees that are still within SITA, the 3, are relatively low-level managers. So your real harsher consequence management would have been against their manager. So simply, what these 3 employees that are within SITA that are still remaining with us, what transpired within the report is that they failed to keep some files, some documents, minutes of meetings. So transactions are not as serious as the transgressions for those people where we are launching, we have lodged, some criminal case upon them. So we're doing 2 things. One is to ensure that the processes within the organization are tightened up so that even those irregularities are not continuing going forward. And then the second part for the 3 employees that are still within SITA is to then ensure before the end of this month, we are also meeting up their related consequence management in line with what these 3 employees were found not to have done. And we are following the processes in line with the Labor Relations Act and the related employment conditions within SITA. So that process for the 3 employees, which you have the names in the annexure, is being implemented, Chair. So this is on overall a summary of what we can say what we at SITA. The details, Chair, are in the annexure that we have provided. As you have also heard from the Minister, we got some legal advice that we can't be publishing the names of the people in this open platform. But that information, Chair, is in the annexure I've made available to the committee. I would stop here, Chair, and would wait then for an opportunity when there are questions, and with the Minister, we will provide the answers that you might have, you on the basis of the questions you must ask. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the brief report. I think we note and accept the request on the revised in relation to the publishing of names of people. We were privy to our advice on the legal reference in relation to the Minister Stellan Ndabeni matter that is indicated. I think we're noting that. Minister Mtsoaledi?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, my colleague, Minister Stellan Ndabeni-Abrahams, and my colleague, Deputy Minister Zuza, and honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. Just as a bit of a background to make sure that we are together, Minister Ndabeni-Abrahams has already been given part of the background that the Department of Home Affairs, as far back as 2015, wanted to modernize their systems, especially the biometric systems, to bring them in line with the modern era of 4IR, such that a new system must be designed, must be provided for, must be customized, must be integrated into our systems, and also data, biometric data from the old system called ABIS must be migrated to the new system. It must also be commissioned, and it must also be maintained and be supported for at least a period of 5 years. That was the aim of this whole exercise. This system, as you know, is called ABIS, Automated Biometric Information System. That has got about 5 biometrics as against the present system we are using called ABIS, Home Affairs Information System. That has got only 2 biometrics. So this is what Home Affairs wanted to achieve. And the tender was issued on our behalf by SITA. But during the 2018-2019 financial year, the Auditor General of South Africa was auditing SITA, was doing the annual audit and picked up this anomaly and declared the contract as having been awarded irregularly. The Department of Home Affairs then appointed forensic auditors, that is next year SAB and TSHI, who did investigation. Today here, after almost a year of that investigation, they are here personally to give you their findings in the investigation. When they finish, Chairperson, the DG will take over to show you the way forward. After all said and done with this anomaly as having been identified by the Auditor General, how do we salvage this progress? Because this program, because we still need it to modernize the Home Affairs Department. So he will show you the progress that has been done, at the same time together with how did we deal with the recommendations from this report. So that's how this will be conducted, Chair. I will give over to the team to give you the the what you call the report. Then they will be followed by the DG with the way, with the progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. As per your delegation. You did not indicate the name of the leader of the who's going to present, Minister. I'm assuming we're inviting them.
No, he will introduce himself and the team. The person who's going to present is from SNT. It's from next year, SAB&T, sorry, not SNT. Next year, SMB&T, they will introduce themselves.
Thank you, team. You are invited.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Deputy Ministers, and Honorable Members of the Portfolio Committee. My name is Bilal Jatim. I am a partner at Nexia SAB&T, the firm that was appointed to do the forensic investigation. Together with me is Chantal Naidu. She is one of the senior managers who are part of this investigation as well. Chair, is it possible for me to put up the presentation?
What is the request?
If I can share the presentation.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair, would you allow me access to share my screen, please?
Mr. Matonsi, Mr. Adams, can you assist?
I've done it already.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Okay. So I think everybody understands why we are gathered here in this meeting today is to discuss the findings, conclusions, and recommendations on the investigation done in relation to the procurement process on the ABIS contract. It must be understood at the onset that the procurement was done in two phases. Specifically, the first phase is an accreditation phase, and then the second phase was the actual award phase. The accreditation phase itself was to accredit service providers to be eligible for the award phase itself. And part of the accreditation phase, the reason for separating the two phases specifically was in the first phase, the SITA and the department were testing whether companies had the capability of doing certain things without giving them access to the tender document itself, as well as the system architecture of what they would require going forward. Obviously, because of security issues, and this is the Home Affairs system, which obviously requires security vetting of companies, directors, employees, etc., etc. So that was the reason for the breakdown between the two phases. And we will break down our presentation in relation to those two phases as well. So we'll talk about our scope of our investigation, some of the limitations that were experienced, the findings relating to the accreditation phase, which was 1412 phase, communication that we identified in the entire process between SITA officials as well as EOH. Findings in relation to the 1498 phase, financial implications, conclusions, recommendations, and then the test of whether the AGSA findings versus our findings correlated. The DHA, together with SITA as a procurement agent, concluded a tender process and appointed a service provider to design, provision, customization, integration, migration of existing data, commissioning, maintenance, and support of ABIS, which is the Automated Biometric Information System, and the business process for a period of 5 years. The audit performed by the Auditor General in 2018-19 declared that the contract was awarded irregularly, as highlighted by the Minister. And thereafter, we were appointed based on those findings to perform the investigation. The scope of our investigation, and as you would understand, that a forensic investigation performed by an entity such as ourselves has got certain limitations in what we could do versus what the law enforcement agencies can do as well. But our scope of our investigation entailed conducting interviews of various DHA and SITA officials to understand the SCM processes involved, review the findings of the AGSA that led to the irregularity on the ABIS contract, and specifically those findings by the AGSA was the main driver for the investigation itself. Review of compliance with the SCM regulations, hold interviews with various other stakeholders, all the documentation, and then there was a specific issue in the project itself, or in the procurement process itself, that the DHA wanted us to look at, was the change of the subcontractors between the accreditation phase and then in the award phase. So there was a change of subcontractors that we would need to look at in terms of that. So at the onset of the project, there were various limitations that were experienced. A specific one was when we went and started at DHA as well as at SITA, we identified that there was no a full, complete set of documentation of valid documentation that was available relating to this project itself, or this entire procurement process. What we did identify is that DHA reconstructed a file, which they call the reconstructed master file, and that was given to us. But when we went through that reconstructed master file, we identified there was a whole lot of gaps in the information itself. There were versions of documents and not the final versions of those documents. There were pages that were missing in terms of the information. We were given, for instance, soft copies of the procurement process and of the tender documents, and those were completely blank as well. And to try to piece together the documentation from both SITA side as well as DHA side at the onset took us quite a substantial amount of time and resources and energy to put together those things. So that was a major issue when we started the investigation itself. Other issues that we identified, according to SITA at the time, they only kept Mimecast data, which is the emails data for employees that terminated their service or left the service of employment of SITA for only 6 months after termination. And there were some officials that resigned in that period for which we could not get the email data for them. Also, SITA indicated that the digital imaging of the SITA program manager, who was part of the procurement process, was part of the procurement and the management of the tender process, was now deceased, and they didn't do his imaging on his computer, so we didn't have access to the data on those computers as well. Based on the reconstruction of the master file and the various versions of documents that we had to sort of obtain and then try to find what is the final version of a document. At that point in time, we could not confirm, the authenticity, or could not guarantee the authenticity of the information that we had, because we had copies of everything and not original documentation. And then not all documentation requested for analysis was made available. So there was some documentation that we still couldn't get at the finalization of the project itself. We were given the physical documents, tender documents, and those did not correspond to the electronic versions that we were provided with, as well as they were incomplete. Various employees also from both SITA and DHA that were involved in the procurement processes were no longer employed by those entities, so we couldn't get access to certain of them. And we had various versions of the final contracts between DHA, SITA, and EOH. And that was around 17 versions of a contract that were made available to us that we had to review to understand the changes in those processes. So relating to 1412, the accreditation phase, the accreditation phase, the advertisement was advertised on the 22nd of April, 2016. And this was an open tender, so it went through the tender bulletins and SA tenders. There was a briefing session that was held on the 6th of May 2016. Amendments to the request for quotation, request for proposal, and the bid closing date were not published in the media originally utilized for publishing the RFP. SITA submitted a request for business case to DHA on the 12th of May 2016, more than 1 year after the request for assistance to SITA and after the advertisement for the bid was published and the compulsory briefing session held. So this tender was advertised on the 26th of April 2016, but the request for assistance between DHA and SITA already took place in 2015, so already a year before that. But at that point in time, a business case for this entire project was not available as yet. The business case was only developed between that period and 2016 for the project itself. And the reason for that, the delay in submitting the business case was caused by the specifications that had to be drafted and included in the said document itself. So whilst the entire communication was transpiring between SITA and DHA relating to this project, the business case was being developed at that point in time. It's a bit back to front, but there was a reason for that. 16 proposals were received in relation to the tender responses. One was disqualified as it was received late. Bidders who did not submit their BE and tax clearance certificates had 7 days to provide the same from the closing date of the tender. We did not find any evidence to confirm whether these bidders submitted the same. The administrative compliance process indicated that all 15 bidders qualified in terms of the process. That's according to the tender process. We, however, found that 3 companies, Supercom, Indra Technology, and Thornbird, was not compliant as they did not supply all the relevant documentation. During the technical evaluation, we found that the attendance registers of meetings were provided, but the minutes of the meetings were not kept. And the technical score sheets provided by the SITA and the procurement process were illegible, which prohibited us from reconducting the calculations. So a lot of compliance issues in the procurement process itself, already in relation to the accreditation phase upfront. One of the requirements was that bidders had to be financially solvent and had to provide 3 years audited financial statements. This was a specific requirement because the entities that that were going to be awarded this project had to carry a substantial amount of cost before any payments would be able to take place. And you don't want to start a process with an entity that cannot afford to do such a big task itself. On the 17th of July 2016, the BEC members deliberated on whether it should be allowed to request bidders to provide individual financial statements as group consolidated AFSs were provided. Now, a lot of these entities, because they were part of a bigger group, a group of companies, provided group consolidated financial statements instead of the actual tendering company's financial statements. So as a case to highlight, EOH Motombo was the tendering company, but EOH Motombo is a subsidiary of the EOH group, the company that's listed on the stock exchange. But EOH provided the financial statements for the EOH group, which was the consolidated financial statements of the listed company, and not Motombo, which is the group, which is the actual tendering company. And EOH wasn't the only one. There were a couple other entities that did the same thing as well. So then there was some deliberation on whether clarification would be allowed in terms of whether SITA would allow the companies to provide financial statements for the individual entities. The BEC facilitator advised that clarification is allowed in terms of the SITA SCM policy. SITA SCM internal audit and legal advised that information can be requested from the bidders, meaning that the bidders were allowed to give financial statements for the tendering company, although they provided for the group company. Technical evaluator, the CFO of DHA, noted that the re-evaluation process did not constitute a clarification, but rather additional information, and should not be allowed. He stated it was going to give an unfair advantage to those bidders, and that the process was compromised. So the SITA then requested individual financial statements from 4 companies, which was Indra, Accenture, Altron, as well as EOH. As I mentioned, that the CFO of DHA indicated that asking for these individual specific companies' financial statements, and these entities provided group financial statements, was incorrect, and it would constitute additional information instead of clarification. Clarification is where you are allowed to clarify certain things in your submission, not additional information. A re-evaluation, which took place on the 1st of September 2016, indicated that Accenture, Seasway Africa, Supercom, NEC, Mediro, EY, EOH, and BBD were all solvent. So that is in terms of the financial verification. Our analysis that we performed on this verification indicated that, and what we identified, that MBT, which was a subcontractor to EOH, submitted financial statements for BBD. Now, if you look above here on the point above, BBD also submitted a proposal by themselves. So one of BBD's subsidiaries was a subcontractor to EOH. EOH provided group financial statements and not the actual bidding financial statements for EOH Motombo. EY indicated, did not provide any financial statements at all, but they indicated that they would provide it in their proposal submission to a designated SITA official, which was then given to the details was given to that specific individual, and EY then provided the financial statements to that specific person. Accenture also provided group financial statements, as well as Altron and Indra. We did not identify any irregularities relating to NEC. It must be understood at this point in time that NEC is the entity that at that point in time was managing the harness system. In our view, the additional information relating to the 4 bidders for the financial statements that were provided does not constitute clarification, as additional information was provided. These bidders should have been declared non-responsive, as they did not provide the correct information in relation to their submission. There was also, we identified an inconsistencies, as bidders who did not submit annual financial statements for the whole period was not requested to provide same, and those bidders were disqualified because they provided 2 years financial statements instead of 3 years financial statements. So on the one side, entities that provided you the wrong information, you asked for the right information, but those entities that provided you 2 years information, you disqualified them instead of asking them for the additional year of information. So there was an inconsistency in relation to that. We identified that the NEC, the FEC, was negligent in that they requested additional information, which was conflicting to the SITA SCM policy, where the information for clarification can be requested. We identified that BBD declared their interest in MBT in BBD submission. However, EOH did not declare their interest with MVT being a subcontractor to them, as well as MVT being a subsidiary of BBD. What we feel is that this poses a potential risk of collusive bidding and potential bid rigging. Essentially, it's almost like double dipping by BBD and MBT in the procurement process itself, because if they don't win on BBD's submission, they could win on EOH's submission. So it's a potential double dipping in terms from their perspective. Despite failing to adhere to the prescripts of the legislation, policies, and documents, 4 entities were recommended to participate in the closed bidding process for 1498 by the BEC. So it was Accenture, EOH, EY, and NEC that were recommended to participate in a closed bidding process in the next phase. Our review performed indicated that only NEC complied with the requirements and should have been accredited. The DHA implemented several precautions, including appointing ARMS, which was another consulting company, and relied on the recommendations from SITA. This other consulting company was almost to do a due diligence on the procurement process itself. We, however, do not agree that the process was fair, as the information requested from the 4 bidders does not constitute clarification, but additional information, as well as the inconsistencies that we identified in disqualifying certain of the other companies when they should have disqualified all of these entities. We reviewed the SITA internal audit report and found that no finding was made in respect of the request for additional information. SITA internal audit applied their discretion on the conflict issue and deemed it immaterial. We disagreed with that The respective director was an active director of both MVT and BBD during the accreditation and award phases. As I mentioned, there was a number of let's call it processes that were put in place by both SITA as well as DHA to ensure that the procurement process, or to validate if the procurement process was fair and followed the proper process. So SITA internal audit did a review of the procurement process, ARMS assisted DHA as well, but this just fell through the wayside. Our review of the ARMS compliance review report has the same findings as we made against the SITA internal audit report. So ARMS also did identify certain issues in respect of this matter, and they indicated that the SITA internal audit report was incorrect. SITA misrepresented their own policy when they requested that the bidders to submit additional information, whereas the bid document was clear in that the bidder had to submit their own financial statements, annual financial statements. That was the findings in relation to the accreditation phase. During the investigation, we then engaged with EOH directly. This was as a result of EOH's submissions made at the Zondo Commission, where the EOH CEO was asked to come and give testimony on certain aspects and certain contracts that EOH were awarded. And we then engaged with EOH, and EOH then put us in touch with ENS Africa. ENS Africa was appointed as forensic investigators to do an internal forensic investigation on EOH's behalf. And we then engaged with ENS Africa to discuss the findings of their internal investigations, as well as to get more evidence and information from them. I'm going to talk through now a couple of slides on the communications that we identified, that ENS Africa identified between EOH, its employees, its executives, as well as SITA itself and SITA officials. So ENS provided us with the correspondence found on the EO8 server in respect of the ABIS project itself. Communication was found between the strategic account executive of EOH, principal IT manager architect of SITA, and EOH executives. All correspondence with the principal IT manager or architect of SITA was done through his Gmail account and not his official SITA email account. The communication found occurred between August 2015 and 22nd February 2017. You will note that as I mentioned at the onset of 1412, that the procurement process started already on the 22nd of April 2016. And we identified that already in August 2015, there was communication between EOH as well as this SITA, implicated SITA official. The topics that included in the topics including the budget, strategic projects of DHA, EO8 SITA priority projects, the advertisement of 1498 were also discussed in some of these communications. On the 25th of August 2015, the Strategic Account Executive of EOH forwarded correspondence to the Principal SITA IT architect with EOH's focus areas, which indicated SAP's AFIS projects as well as DHA AFIS project. You'll see the semblance between AFIS and ABIS, and we'll get into that just now. What I would like to highlight as well is the Strategic Account Executive of Strategic Account Executive of EOH was a previous employee of SITA. So EOH took on this SITA official, and this official's job as the Strategic Account Executive of EOH was to bring in more work from public sector and specifically hold a relationship with SITA itself. On the 8th of September 2015, the EOH Strategic Account Executive wanted to know how it was going with the frickin' DHA, on which the Principal IT Architect of SITA responded that they were discussing modernization and that there was something for them, which was for EOH. The Principal Architect, SITA Architect, identified several opportunities to the EOH executive, including the harness ABIS project at DHA. This was in October 2015. Already there, you can see they're talking about a business case that we mentioned about previously as well. In October 2015, the Strategic Account Executive of EOH provided to the EOH executives, and we're talking about EOH Motombo, executives with the key projects and the key areas that EOH needed to focus on. This included the DHA population register. The Principal IT Architect of SITA was copied in this communication to his Gmail account. So they use ABIS, and AFIS almost interchangeably, also known as the population register as well. So these are all talking about the same thing. Biometric movement control as well is all part of the same thing as well. That is the ABIS project and the enhancement of the current harness system to ABIS itself. On the 24th of October, the Strategic Account Executive of EOH submitted a PowerPoint presentation to the Principal IT Manager Architect of SITA, referring to the priority projects, including the Home Affairs Population Register, Biometric Movement Control System. And this is all before the 1412 phase already even started, before the advertisement went out in April 2016. On the 3rd of April 2016, which was 2 weeks before the advertisement went out, the Strategic Account Executive of EOH discussed a possible retainer with Mr. Lowe, which is the alias that they used for the SITA IT manager or architect, with the EOH executive. And the correspondence, as contained in the information in respect of Mr. Lowe's imperative involvement moving forward and his protection. That's the exact words that they used. Imperative involvement moving forward and his protection. So they're already talking about a retainer for the person in SITA who was they were corresponding with in relation to this project itself. This could be seen as compensation for confidential information supplied to EOH. On the 13th of April, which was just before the advertisement went out, the strategic account executive for EOH forwarded a PowerPoint presentation to the SITA IT manager, named presentation for DHA. The presentation referred to the population register, biometric identification, movement control, and administration. So already they understood the structure of what the system should entail in a way, broadly in a way, not necessarily the actual detail, but they understood already what they were looking for. And this was just before the advertisement went out. On the 15th of December 2016, now this is after they were awarded for 1412 into 1498 when they were credited in the 1498 phase. The strategic account executive of EOH forwarded correspondence received from the former CEO of EOH ICT business to the SITA IT manager, whereby DHA concerns were discussed. The initial correspondence stated that regarding DHA Low, Mr. Low, he shared his views regarding the products to use, as this is his direct responsibility. He offered his help in doing the tender, meaning that they were already preparing for the 1498 phase, for the submission of their tender, for their proposal for the second phase, which was for 1498. And Mr. Lowe offered to help them to develop their business case for that proposal, to help them to do that tender. He also indicated what products to use for building of the system itself in their tender submission. So already they had assistance from within SITA, one person within SITA, for that submission of theirs, which will happen, you'll see, in February 2017. On the 22nd of February 2017, the EOH executive within EOH forwarded correspondence to the EOH Managed Services Public Sector official. In that was correspondence. Now, this is 6 days before the submission of the proposal for 1498 goes in, 6 days before. In this year, what was attached was appointment letters dated 2016 of the DHA officials serving on the BEC for the harness technology upgrade. So it was relating to the 1412 phase. The letter dated 12th of May 2016 from SITA to the erstwhile DG of DHA requesting the business case for the harness refresh project. This letter contained information in respect of the deliverables for the project. They had the business case for the project that we said that was made available in April 2016. The business case that was developed, they were given this business case. So they had the undated business case for the provision of the request for accreditation and request for proposal of the biometrics identification system for DHA. The business case was on what seems to be a DHA letterhead. And here's the interesting thing. It contained the budget for the project itself. So it had the bill of materials, it had the financial implication for DHA, it had the BEC members of the DHA, it contained all the DHA project manager details. So 6 days before the tender was due, they received the budget. Well, EOH communicated the budget internally within EOH itself. So this is a little schematic to show you how and where the process unfolded in terms of the communication. So on the 17th of April 2015, a letter from the DHA requesting assistance already in 2015, as I mentioned. Then there was correspondence between the EOH officials as well as the SITA officials already before the advertisement took place, all of those that we mentioned above. There was an email from EOH in respect of the presentation to SITA on 13th of April. On the 22nd of April only, that advertisement went out. So already there you can see a year before they've had access to people internally as well as information internally in relation to the bid. The recommendation for accreditation took place on the 5th of October 2016, and then letters of accreditation to the bidders were issued to them on the 31st of October. In that time, we identified that the advertisement for the bid went out on 13th of December 2016, but already, as I mentioned previously, that in this period between October and December, there was also some level of communication there. But the most important thing, that on the 28th of February for 1498, their actual closed bid submissions for the 4 entities that were accredited took place on the 28th of February 2017. But EOH had the business case probably sometime before that, but it was disseminated within EOH on the 22nd of February 2017, obviously giving them an unfair advantage, as well as giving them access to the budget, etc., etc. And then in 2017, on the 1st of September 2017, the bid was awarded to EOH on the 1st of September 2017. Now I'll take you through the findings relating to the 1498 phase, the actual closed bid process. As I mentioned, in 1412 phase, 4 entities were accredited to be eligible to get the actual specifications for the closed bidding phase for 1498. That would have been MEC, EOH, EY, and Accenture. Those are the 4 entities. What we identified in terms of findings relating to this phase, the specifications were not approved in line with the SCM policy. The RFP advertisement fully met the requirements to be advertised as per the SITA policies and the requirements in terms of the National Treasury regulations, so everything was fine there. When I say that the specifications were not improved in terms of the SCM policy, the specifications were drafted. There were comments by the BSC Bid Specification Committee, and what we identified was that those comments were not addressed and brought back to the BSC for approval by the BSC, but the officials took those specifications, they adjusted them and advertised them immediately. So they bypassed the actual approval process of the BSC itself. It went straight into advertisement. But the advertisement requirements, etc., that fully went through the entire process. The bid opening and closing processes, that were fine. There were 3 officials from SITA tender office were present during the bid closing and opening process. We did not receive all the relevant documentation. We could not confirm whether the NDAs and declaration forms of members of the BSC, BEC were not completed and whether they were merely outstanding. Against compliance issues, administrative compliance issues within the process at SITA that were identified. For all transactions between 100 and 500 million rand, where SITA acts as the procurement agency, the EPC has to refer its recommendations to the Board Procurement Committee in respect of the delegations of authority. So that's the SITA Board Procurement Committee. The BPC supported the recommendations by the EPC to submit the recommendation for the award of the contract to EOH, to the DG of DHA for approval. So we're skipping the entire process. I'm just giving you a highlight of how the approval took place. The SITA SCM policy provides that all tenders to the value of 100 million rand and above must be subjected to external audit process, integrity review, and probity check before the submission for approval by the adjudication committee. There were a number of consultants, again, in this process as compared to the first process, that were part of these entire processes to make sure that the procurement process followed and the evaluation processes followed, etc., were fair. SITA appointed an entity by the name of Business Innovations Group to conduct an external audit on the process from their perspective. The DHA then appointed an entity called ARMS, which I indicated above previously, to audit the procurement process of the ABIS contract. So from both sides, there were external consultants that were brought in to assist. ARMS indicated that the ACM processes to appoint EOH were found to be compliant with the SCM SITA policy. The Technical Evaluation Committee, which was part of the Procurement Committee of the EPC, as well as our experts, confirmed that all the bidders complied with the technical mandatory requirements which were. So we had to reanalyze from a technical perspective the technical submissions made by those entities in relation to the technical and mandatory requirements. So there was a finding from the Auditor General, and that's why we had to do this, that some of these entities did not comply with the actual requirements. But our IT experts, as well as the Technical Evaluation Committee of SITA and DHA, indicated that the technical mandatory requirements were met. And that supported multiple biometric modality support, commercial off-the-shelf components, compliance with international biometric standards, and then life cycle requirements. So life cycle requirements. One specific area that was raised by the AG in their report was that the life cycle solution that was proposed by the entities had to have a 5-year life cycle. Now, you must understand that these submissions were probably 500, 600 pages, 1,000 pages, some of them, to understand the technicalities of the system and what these entities were proposing as solutions for these things. And I don't think the AG applied their mind correctly in terms of that, but we identified that that the IT equipment usually comes with a 3-year warranty, which is correct. And then the suppliers and the OEMs did not provide an end of life for each of those components. But in order for the equipment to have a 5-year lifespan, an extended warranty must be purchased. And in their submission, EOH indicated that all hardware will be supplied with an extended warranties. So the finding of the AG in terms of the 5-year lifespan was incorrect. We identified in the submission that there was extended warranties that were provided. We also identified that bidders complied with the technical functionality criteria. One of the technical functionality criteria was the requirement for an active-active solution. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of technicalities here. Active-active solution is when you have one system, but if the system goes down immediately, without any human intervention, the backup kicks in and the system is restored immediately. So active means that there's always the system is always up and running. And there's multiple ways of doing that. in terms of a solution, how they would propose it. And after a lot of differing viewpoints, technical analysis on these aspects, our own technical advisors as well indicating that the proposal and the submission made by EOH was actually an active-active solution. And it would make sense because they had inside knowledge already a couple of months before everybody else on what solution should be implemented. They had insider information, and the system architect was helping them to build whatever solution they were going to be proposing. So it would make sense that their solution that they are providing is an active-active solution. But there was a whole lot of debate about the solutions itself that was proposed. There were varying differing viewpoints were raised on the bidders' submissions regarding this requirement by external auditors and technical experts appointed by DHA and SITA. Our interview with SITA as well, of EOH, who won the bid, and the evaluation by our IT experts indicated that EOH complied with this requirement. SITA appointed a company then called CoreFocus as their technical advisors to assist them to evaluate the technical submissions by the entities themselves, and to confirm whether these systems can do, or these submissions as was proposed by these entities can do exactly what was required by SITA and DHA. During our interview with the director of CoreFocus, he indicated that CoreFocus were not the technical experts in this specific area. They were IT experts in some parts of IT, but we all know IT is very broad. You can be a technical expert in one aspect, but know nothing in another aspect. CoreFocus submitted 3 reports. Each differed in many ways in their submissions, and eventually, they came to a realization that the submissions that were made by EOH were actually in line with the technical requirements. But in the first instance, obviously there was different views specifically to that, saying that this wasn't an active-active solution. But when they went through the process, and it was 3 different times that it was indicated that it was an active-active solutions. So the reports were changed after the EPC meetings as requested by the EPC. This statement was made by the director of CoreFocus himself. So it was changed at the EPC or after all of the EPC meetings. And since he is no technical expert in this specific area, he amended his report based on the discussions of what was transpiring at the EPC meetings. The BEC, which was made up of the Technical Evaluation Committee and the Price Evaluation Committee, evaluated the bid on 3 occasions, since it was referred back for re-evaluation by the EPC on 2 occasions. So the EPC referred it back, and then the BEC would then go and re-evaluate. In the first submission by the BEC to the EPC on the 22nd of May 2017, certain exclusions were made by some of the bidders regarding the hardware and software licensing and training structure. This resulted in all 3 bidders being requested to clarify their pricing. Like with any entity, when you're submitting your proposal, there's certain things that you either might not know, assumptions that you would make, exclusions that you would include in your bid submissions, and those were what was causing some sort of discussion in the first submission itself. EOH listed some exclusions, and the PEC concluded that EOH was disqualified due to the pricing being incomplete. The pricing report contained a price breakdown which indicated that all bidders had exclusions. Not only EOH had exclusions, but all bidders had exclusions. The EPC found that the decision to disqualify EOH for exclusions was not justifiable, and the EPC referred it back to the BEC. The second submission by the BEC to the EPC was made thereafter on the 26th of May 2017. SITA HOD of Tactical Sourcing informed the EPC that the price evaluators did not update the price report, as they were of the opinion that bidders were disqualified for non-responsiveness. She also stated that the document on exclusions were not compiled by all price evaluators, as some were not available for the reconvening. Then the EPC felt that the BEC did not address the issues that were raised by the EPC on the 23rd of May 2017 and referred the submission back to the BEC to be reevaluated. So that second meeting that transpired, basically not much took place between the first and the second submissions. During the third evaluation, the TEC conducted a due diligence exercise whereafter they found that the exclusions were not material and that EOH complied with the technical specifications. In the third submission by the BEC to the EPC, they recommended the award to EOH. The EPC then sent a submission to the Board Procurement Committee to recommend the award to EOH to the DG of DHA. Just before this, another consulting company was brought in. This time, Gartner was brought in to look at the RFP process, including the bill of materials. The BAC of the Department of Home Affairs supported the recommendation. So the BAC of the DHA supported the recommendation to the DG of DHA to award the contract to EOH. The Gartner report was there. We looked at it. We analyzed it. There were some issues that were eventually worked out. But there were, as I indicated, there were a number of consultants that were brought into the entire process. What I would like to raise is that the process of the Board Procurement Committee, the EPC, the Technical Evaluation Committee, and the PEC, the toing and the froing and the up and the down, that's what raised a lot of the suspicion in relation to this procurement process, because at some point it almost seemed forced, like EOH was, almost forced into the appointment. But if you applied your mind in the start of this entire process, at the start of those submissions, EOH would have went through the process fine. There was no reasons for the up and down, but the up and down took place, which indicated some alarm bells to be raised. But based on our review, our re-evaluation of the bids, the technical evaluation of the bids, those things were non-issues for ourselves. As I indicated up front, part of our mandate was to look at the change of subcontracting between the 1412 phase and the 1498 phase. So the subcontractors indicated in the contract between EOH and DHA differed from the subcontractors that were used by EOH in the accreditation phase. So in 1412 phase, it was highlighted that you are not allowed to change subcontractors in 1412 phase. And 1412 phase, the vetting process of changing of the subcontractors as well as the main contractors took place in 1412 phase. EY was the main was a main bidder in 1412 phase. They were also accredited as a main bidder in 1412 phase. But in 1498, EY did not do a submission for 1498, but became a subcontractor of EOH in the 1498. So there was a change in EOH's subcontracting in 1498 itself. Using EY, who was a main bidder on its own, they became a subcontractor in 1498, which also raised some level of questions and suspicion of why this took place. What we identified in the 1498 phase, in the briefing session, it was then indicated that subcontractors could be changed without changing the materially changing the team that would be doing the entire project itself. So it was allowed in terms of the 1498 phase, but in 1412, it was clearly stated that change of subcontracting would not be allowed. Only in 1498, in the briefing session, it was indicated that a change of subcontracting would be allowed. So that was the reason why EOH changed subcontractors in there, but knowing that EY was a main contractor. When we engaged with EY, why they did not submit their own bid, they indicated that when the terms of reference came out and they looked at it, they are a consulting technology company. They are not they don't build technologies. And building a system like this was well beyond their capability. So they could look at partnering with an entity and do some of the consulting work in developing the system itself, meaning changing of business processes, looking at architecture, etc., etc. So that would be their role in the entire process in the 1498 phase. And that's why they opted to partner with one of the entities, which we didn't find to be an issue. But when it came to contracting after the award of the contract to EOH, what we identified is that EY withdrew as a subcontractor to EOH after meeting with EOH representatives, and where basically EY indicated that them subcontracting to EOH was not financially worthwhile. Initially, their consulting part of this entire project was much bigger, but as it was awarded, EY then started cutting down the role that they would play within the entire project. And their fees went from 30-odd million down to about 7 million rand. And for them, they said it's not worth it to get involved with this project for 7 million rand, so they pulled out. Then EOH was forced to use another subcontractor to bring in another subcontractor in relation to this project. Now, at this stage, this subcontractor was not security vetted, as well as this subcontractor was brought in at the very last minute. EOH brought in a company by the name of ABIS to assist them with exactly what EY was going to do. Right? As I mentioned, EY was only going to get 7 million rand from 30-odd million rand. They were asked to do. They were asked to do specifically the processes around the system. The erstwhile CFO of SITA until 2018 was also the chair of the EPC for the ABIS tender process. Remember the EPC committee that I mentioned? She informed us in an interview with us that after leaving SITA, she did training for EOH through ABIS. Now, this entity, ABIS, was brought in by EOH. It's interesting, and it's a coincidence, that ABIS is also the entity that the erstwhile CFO of SITA until September 2018, which is after this contract was concluded, and as well as the chairperson of the EPC, worked for ABIS. We could not confirm the date on which EOH appointed ABIS. However, we established that from EOH that the first work order for ABIS was dated 22 January 2018. ABIS charged EOH approximately 15 million rand, of which 7 million rand was an overcharge. So 7 million rand they overcharged ABIS, and EOH paid ABIS 7 million rand over. The removal of the PM work from the scope of work of EY resulted in only 8.1 million rand in fees for EY, which was not feasible for EY. So apologies, I said it was 7 million rand, it was 8.1 million rand that EY was going to get, and they pulled out because for them it was going to be a 35 million rand project. Their fees were brought down to 8.1 million rand. But interestingly enough, ABIS, who did the same work as what EY was supposed to do, got paid out 15 million rand. So they were paid 7 million rand more for the work that EY was going to do for 8 million rand. And the SITA CFO at the time, who was the chairperson of the EPC, said that she worked for ABIS. Very big coincidence there. The financial implications of the tender received indicated that the lowest acceptable tenderer was EOH, who quoted 409 million rand to implement the ABIS project in 12 to 24 months. EOH's proposed costing was the closest to the 380 million rand budget that was laid out for this project. As I mentioned when we looked at the emails, EOH obtained the budget for this year 6 days before the proposal was due. They came in at 409 million rand. The budget was 380 million rand. Both NEC and Accenture, who also submitted as part of the closed bid process, were over 600 million rand. Both of them were 609 and 620 million rand, so they were very close together. And that was 200 million rand more than the proposed budget. So it's evident that EOH had access to the budget, they knew what the budget was, and they came closest to the budget. Based on the findings, the entire contract is irregular, and as such, all payments made to date should be regarded as irregular expenditure, which we agreed with the Auditor General. The payments made to EOH up to February 2020, and there was payments made after that day as well, and work conducted after that day amounted to 283 million rand. And those payments should be regarded as irregular as well. We identified that in the entire payment process to EOH, part of the 283 million rand as mentioned there, we identified that there was an overpayment of 5.7 million rand to EOH. This occurred when an invoice was captured incorrectly. It was captured as 6.3 million rand instead of 634,000 rand. The CFO of DHA confirmed that the DHA account from which the overpayment was made was an interest-bearing account. The overpayment was ultimately refunded by EOH to DHA on the 16th of September 2019, which was approximately 18 months after the overpayment was made. This means that the DHA lost interest on the amount and that EOH may have benefited due to the overpayment. Conclusions relating to 1412. The system of internal control at DHA and SITA is ineffective as documentation requested was not readily available and the files had to be reconstructed. Employees that left the employment of both DHA and SITA were blamed for documentation information not being available. EOH, EY, and Accenture should have been disqualified as their bids should have been declared non-responsive or unresponsive and did not comply with the procurement principles. The available evidence indicates that the SITA principal IT manager communicated with EOH before the ABIS project commenced and during the drafting of the specifications. Confidential DHA documents, including the proposal, the budgets, the business case, were made available to EOH. And this gave them an advantageous position and rendered the process unfair and uncompetitive. Applying the procurement legislation and policy prescripts, all bidders except for the NEC should have been disqualified during the accreditation phase. EOH, EY, and Accenture should have gone through to the second phase, should not have gone through to the second phase, apologies, of the project by virtue of the fact that they did not pass phase 1 and the accreditation phase. Conclusions relating to 1498. The specifications were not approved before the bid was advertised. The evaluation process followed was in order. Overall process was in order. However, EOH received the business case, including budget, prior to the closing bid, date for the bid. And as such, their bid price was closest to the bid, to the project budget. The possibility exists that EOH may have privy to further confidential information regarding this bid, since there was communication between EOH representatives as well as the SITA employee, and we obviously don't know about all the communication to them. This was only stuff that we identified and found. The project did not comply with the expected timeframes and is still in progress at the moment. The DHA implemented several precautions, which was ARMS, Gartner. They relied on recommendations from SITA as the procurement agency, even though DHA officials were present on several committees during the evaluation process for both phases. Recommendations. We had general recommendations in respect of the entire project itself, but I think those are being covered by DHA and SITA. We recommend that DHA investigate the overpayment to EOH further and identify the officials who should have been who should be held accountable and be disciplined. Although EOH may take disciplinary action against its employees who were in its employ at the time of the irregularities, EOH can still be held vicariously liable for the actions of their employees. DHA management should improve the control environment to ensure that legislation, regulations are followed for the retention and documentation. Senior procurement officers should file all tender documentation in respect of the bids and the master file, and project managers should be copied on all correspondence. I think this is all compliance related stuff. Disciplinary action. The DHA to discuss possible disciplinary action with SITA against relevant SITA employees for failing to ensure that the amendment to the documentation was published on the media where it was originally advertised. DHA to discuss possible disciplinary action with SITA against relevant employees for recommending the approval of the bid specification to the DG, although the specifications were not approved by the BSC, to whom the specifications were presented on the 12th of December 2015. The DHA and SITA should consider disciplinary action in terms of the SITA SCPM policy against the following officials for requesting additional information instead of clarification information, which result in the substance of the bids being changed. Possible disciplinary action by DHA for the overpayment. The DHA should consider investigating the overpayment and instituting disciplinary action against the DHA officials involved in the overpayment itself. Disciplinary action to be taken against the BEC facilitator for a role in the accreditation phase. The secretariat function of the bid committees for failing to ensure comprehensive minutes were kept for the meetings held on so and so dates, and that the meetings did not hold the names of the attendees or the signatures. Disciplinary action to be considered against applicable officials in terms of SITA policy for the adjudication and award functions, the scorings that were not fair, the consistencies were applied, etc., etc. Disciplinary actions to be considered by SITA against persons consulted during the evaluation process in that they failed to apply the SITA SCM policy when they conducted the integrity assessment for the internal audit that resulted in additional information requested from the forbidders. And I think at this stage, SITA did indicate that some of these actions have already started taking place in their presentation made to us earlier. Disciplinary action to be considered against by DHA against and SITA against the BEC members employed by the DHA and SITA respectively, in that they did not ensure that the technical evaluation was fair, consistent, and correctly applied, and for failing to adhere to the prescripts of the bid document. When the recommendation for the accreditation of Essentia EY EOH, whilst they did not comply with the those requirements. Recommendations for criminal action. There is definite evidence that clearly indicates that there was correspondence relating to the tender between the SITA officials as well as EOH officials. The correspondence took place while SITA procurement principal IT manager was employed by SITA, and while the strategic account executive was employed by EOH, and prior to the tender being advertised for both phases. The correspondence shows that information regarding the ABIS tender was leaked to EOH, giving EOH an unfair advantage over the bidders. This resulted in the tender process not being fair, equitable, competitive, and transparent in terms of the constitution. Further correspondence from the SITA, from the strategic account executive of EOH to EOH executives themselves refers to a retainer being paid to SITA principal IT manager. There's a possibility that the retainer may be construed as gratification as defined by PRECA, and same can be confirmed or refuted through a criminal investigation into this matter. We also indicated that the strategic account executive, EOH, communicated with the former EOH CEO. We informed her that Low shared his views regarding which product to use for the tender and offered to help to do the tender. Here again, it appears that prima facie proof of possible corruption by the strategic account executive, EOH CEO, former EOH CEO, yes, Mr. Low, and we therefore recommend criminal investigation to be conducted in this matter. We also indicated on the 22nd of February 2017, prior to the bid closure, EOH had access to the budgets, bills of materials, the business case, etc., etc. Again, we've got proof of possible corruption. We found prima facie proof of corruption between SITA officials, the strategic account executive, EOH executives, EOH managed service public sector, as well as the former EOH CEO, and a criminal investigation is recommended in terms of the relevant sections of PRECA and the relevant other legislation. The investigation has revealed possible criminal conduct by EOH employees, SITA current and previous employees, and employees current and previous of DHA. A detailed investigation, criminal investigation, is recommended. It is important that any persons who may have identified as having committed any crime or benefiting from the criminal activity based on the findings of the criminal investigation should be charged and prosecuted. It is emphasized that these recommendations do not pronounce on the guilt of any persons and should be presumed innocent until proven guilty. in a competent court of law. We did not establish whether DHA officials were possibly implicated in the criminal activities. However, this could be covered during the criminal investigation. We therefore recommend that a criminal case be opened by the DG of DHA with the DPCI so that it can be established whether corruption, theft, or fraud has been committed regarding the ABIS tender from the DHA side. It's also imperative to identify perpetrators and persons who may have benefited from this crime. We also recommend that a criminal investigation be concluded on the actions of the erstwhile CFO of SITA, as it was mentioned in her interview. After resigning from SITA in 2018, she did training for EOH via ABIS. We established that ABIS was overpaid by 7 million rand for work that should have been charged for 8 million rand. The criminal investigation should determine whether the erstwhile CFO was possibly involved or not involved in any corruption regarding the ABIS project and the subsequent training provided. Legal proceedings, recommendations in terms of legal proceedings. The DHA should consider the possibility of instituting legal action against implicated entities who may be found to be implicated in the DHA incurring irregular expenditure and or who may have received payments not due to them. The DHA should consider obtaining legal opinion on the question whether a valid contract was ever concluded, if the contract between DHA as well as if the contract between DHA and EOH should be declared null and void. This can also be addressed whether together with the civil action against the various parties. DHA should consider obtaining legal advice on the possible action to be taken, if any, against SITA in respect of the irregular expenditure that was incurred as a result of their actions. The DHA should consider obtaining legal advice on whether it may be in a position to recover the fees that were paid to SITA to act as the procurement agency for DHA. The DHA should consider recovering the lost interest of 299,000 Rand as calculated by ourselves on a simplified calculation method through the overpayment of 5.7 million Rand to EOH from DHA officials who are responsible for the overpayment. In relation to the findings of the AGSA versus what we found, there are a number of pages of the comparisons that we've done. I'm not going to go through all of them. Suffice to say that based on the findings on this report, we confirm or we refute some of the findings per the Auditor General report. However, the refuted findings that we have do not have a material impact on the overall conclusion by ourselves as well as the AG, in that we agree that the entire contract and all amounts paid to EOH would be considered as irregular. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable members, for providing us with this opportunity to present this report to yourselves.
Thank you very much for the detailed report. Members will interact with the report once the Home Affairs have tabled their report. Can I establish if this report was also shared with both the SITA and Home Affairs?
Yes, this report has been presented to ministers, deputy ministers of both for both entities, as well as other members as well of the entities.
Okay, thanks very much. I just wanted to establish that clarity. PG Makode.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Honorable Chair, members, and also the colleagues from SITA, Mr. KEC and the others, and also those from the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. Muzi, if you can load our presentation. Bilal, if you can step off the platform.
Sir, are you asking us to leave the meeting?
If you can just move the presentation so that we can load ours.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. You are not leaving the meeting yet.
Okay. I've stopped sharing my screen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, DG. Can you proceed?
Yes, sir. Mozi, are you able to load the... It's really just a few slides. I think the minister has already provided the introduction, Chair. I think in the main, what the minister indicated is really what is to be done. In terms of that, Chair, there were 6 recommendations as the slide is coming up in terms of what Home Affairs was supposed to do. If you can move just to slide number 6 instead of us starting at the slide number 6. There we go. Thank you, Chair. So there were 6 recommendations in terms of what Bilal has just presented as to what is it that we're supposed to do. Firstly, we're supposed to appoint legal counsel to advise on the current contract. Secondly, we were supposed to ensure that we strengthen internal controls for our processes, including SITA as well. And the third area was really to ensure that we take disciplinary action against officials that were referred to in the report as having requested additional information instead of clarifying information. And the fourth area was to, I think this relates to SITA, the executive caretaker has spoken to that aspect. And the fifth one is really for us to recommend action against former SITA and EOH officials that colluded on the build. And the last one was for us to open a criminal case with the Hawks. So we'll then provide the committee with where we are with regards to those recommendations. On the first one, where we were required to appoint legal counsel to advise, we then appointed Advocate Johan Hershenson. On the legal opinion that we then received on the 9th of April, they made the following remarks. Advocate Hershenson clearly states that it is clear that the individuals identified in the report and who are currently still employed by the Department of Home Affairs as having been involved in any of the impropriety ought to face disciplinary proceedings as soon as possible. Further, Advocate Hershenson says, in as far as it appears that criminality may have taken place, particularly with the provision of information and documentation to which EOH was not entitled, the matter should be referred to the National Prosecuting Authority for investigations and ultimate prosecution. I think, Honorable Chair, in the presentation by Bilal, he spoke about areas of collusion. If you can move to the next slide, Muzi. Further, Advocate Hershenson states that it's clear in his mind that there are several contraventions, not only statutory criminal provisions, but also common law crimes, which have been indicated and demonstrated in the report. And therefore, he says these matters must be investigated and must be referred to the applicable authorities to take the necessary action. And therefore, the legal opinion that we received confirmed the findings of both the Auditor General and next year SABNT on the irregularity of the contract. I'll then move to the next area. On the disciplinary action against officials, Honorable Chair and members, we provide the following report that in the report by next year SABNT, 6 officials at Home Affairs were implicated in the report. And therefore, the officials were given an opportunity to make representations as to why disciplinary action should not be taken against them. Following their responses, charges are being drafted, and this will be served by the 28th of May, 2021. With regards to the criminal case, we have proceeded with this. A case was registered on the 5th of March at the Pretoria Central Station. There's the case number. A detailed report together with further evidence was therefore handed over to the Hawks on the 15th of April, and we are continuously monitoring that case, Honorable Chair. Now, the second area that we wish to address to the committee is the request that we have made to National Treasury on the condonation for the irregular expenditure that we have incurred. The irregular expenditure relating to the ABIS contract is disclosed as irregular expenditure in the financial statements of the department. As of the 31st of March 2021, against the contract, it's more than 280 million. Now, Chair, in accordance with the irregular expenditure framework, we then indicated that there was value for money that was derived, in particular, the hardware and the software that already had been procured by EOH. And we believe that some of the actions that we have undertaken, including the opening of a criminal case and the commencement of the disciplinary actions, comply within that framework. We then request the Chair, National Treasury, on the 12th of April to then condone the total contract amount as the forensic investigation is now complete. Once that condonation is then granted, this amount will therefore be disclosed as irregular expenditure by the department. Of course, it will then decrease substantially. And therefore, National Treasury is still considering that request, and then we will be able to provide the committee with any further updates. Then there's another development that we thought we should bring to the committee. This committee directed us in the setting of this contract to IDEMIA. And then on the 11th of February 2021, the Department of Home Affairs then received approval from National Treasury to cede the contract to IDEMIA. And therefore, the DHA legal engagements with both the EOH and IDEMIA were finalized and concluded. What we then refer as the deeds of assignment, which will govern the transitional period between the two entities. We then also, Chair, entered into a master service agreement with IDEMIA in line with all the necessary conditions and the scope of the project as per the initial tender requirement. I think what is key here is really to save the project. So therefore, the project execution under IDEMIA has commenced with phase 1 from the 1st of May 2021. And it is estimated, Chair, that this should be completed within a period of 7 months from the date that I've just referred to. Of course, IDEMIA will then utilize all the hardware and software that had already been procured by EOH with the possibility of enhancing in certain areas. Chair, we can move to the next slide, Muzi. So they've undertaken to Home Affairs that they will be able to deliver this ABIS project, in particular in accordance with the 3 phases that I will speak to. So phase 1, Chair, which has already started until December 2021, they've indicated that on completion of phase 1, ABIS should be fully functional and operational with all the functionalities currently enjoyed by Department of Home Affairs under HANIS as detailed in the tender. And therefore, there are these additional features and capabilities that will be able to perform, for example, facial recognition and latent searches as indicated in the tender. But I also must indicate to the committee that there are benefits that we will be able to derive during this phase. Firstly, it will be able to reduce these cases of duplicate identities. I do know that Honorable Kanyile sent through another, I think, about 2 cases last night. So this is one of the things that immediately we should be able to derive the benefits from it. The second one, it should be able to ensure that we improve our service delivery due to the faster turnaround times for those applying for ID documents and passport. This is linked, of course, Chair, to the digitization process that we speak about in the annual performance plan. This might not be immediate. However, it's one of the benefits that we should be able to derive. And the second one is really on the economy. The banks will be able to verify their clients even much more quicker. And of course, the other one is related to our contribution to the economic reconstruction and recovery, where tourism will benefit due to the quicker responses time at ports of entry to capture or verify a traveler's identity. And then on security, the South African Police Services will be able to search for suspects by matching, of course, the latent prints against records on ABIS. And then I think I spoke to the improved border control. And I think it's important to highlight here, Chair, that this integrated multimodal system, which is scalable and expandable for future capabilities, will ensure that not only does it provide us with cutting-edge authentication and security protocols, but it also will ensure that our own employees are exposed to new and modern ways of working. We do know that the world of work is changing at a very fast pace, and therefore this will ensure that our own staff embrace technology. If we can move to the next page, this is phase 2 of the ABIS project. Is indicated on completion. ABIS should offer functionalities and capabilities relating to other biometric modalities. And of course, this will include, Chair, if you look at the identity management policy that we currently are working on, we are introducing those aspects such as recognition of your iris, palm print, and infant footprints, recognition. So those should be able to be derived as benefits. And then, of course, phase 3 will be undertaken at a date to be jointly agreed between ourselves and the service provider. And amongst others, it will entail ongoing technological developments as may be requested by the department from time to time as additional services during the term. If we can move to the next slide, I think this was the concluding slide. So therefore, we are recommending to the committee that the committee notes this presentation. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, DG. Thanks very much, Minister Stella Ndabeni Abrahams, Minister Mtsoaledi, and all colleagues who ran the presentations. Members, these presentations as the committee recommended that there must be investigation around this process of the EOH arising from the opinion of the Auditor General. And it was carried as has been indicated here by the presentations. And we're going to invite members to interface or interact with the report, and we'll outline how we're going to receive comments or responses from Minister's delegation, so that we're able to have a process forward to conclude this matter. It appears that the recommendations are clearer in terms of way forward. And I think after the committee comments, it will be a track plan on how we're going to monitor this recommendation in this financial year. I think I'm commend the team and members of the committee for the focus on this subject, so that we root out what is standing as a clean governance to all the institutions of the department and the entities. I'm going to invite Honorable Lizelle. She has indicated that she'll be debating. If she has joined us, she will indicate. I will start with Honorable Molekwa, Honorable Rose, Honorable Mqini, Honorable Pillay, Honorable Tito, Honorable Kanyile, Honorable Lokhwase, Veteran Lokota, and Honorable Mudise. I must indicate there are members who indicated network challenges. They need to be, if they get disrupted, we must note that challenge. Honorable Molekwa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me start by appreciating the presentation presented by all the 3 stakeholders. We really appreciate the information contained in all the presentation that has been presented. Chairperson, let me also welcome all the issues raised in the presentation and the progress that has been made so far. We appreciate all the effort that has been made in making sure that all critical issues and irregularities are identified and the process that has been taken by all stakeholders to make sure that all those issues are attended to. Chairperson, I want to note the presentation has been presented and welcome the processes and the step to be taken so far as the disciplinary processes is concerned. And we will await the outcome of the DC. And I also want to agree with the investigation to proceed so that we finally get closure on the issue on this matter, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Honorable Ruas.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the presenters. The DA welcomes this process, Chair, but this is another sad case of what happens when officials are appointed via cadre deployment, and how much of this is going on a daily basis. So, we agree with the recommendations, but this process also caused delays. And it caused us to be in a position where we're running Harness and ABIS in parallel and actually paying for two systems. So, the DG says that the department wants the irregular expenditure condoned. But one thing I didn't really see enough of in this presentation is how these millions and millions are going to be recouped. What is the plan to recoup this money? Because at the end of the day, we've just been through a budget process where we've been told COVID-19 is the cause for budget cuts. And then we see money disappearing like this. And we say, what is the consequence? Because it's taxpayer money that is lost due to these fraudulent processes. This is money that could have gone to these projects that we had to wave goodbye to, or a BMA that we have to put on hold. So really, the issue of EOH being vicariously liable, they can't just see a project and go off into the distance. And we really need to see the DHA doing everything they can to recoup the money that is gone, because they desperately need it. Another point of concern is really that emails are deleted after 6 months. I don't know if I misunderstood that, but I find it very strange that for persons in a supply chain environment, that their emails are deleted after 6 months. If you look at financial documents in a company, they are typically kept for 5 years, as far as I know, in case there's an audit. So I'd like to understand why there's such a short period there. Because surely for supply chain, there could be an investigation that takes a long time to get there. And then this evidence is essentially destroyed. It's concerning that it seems that people that leave get off scot-free. And my question is, was there any investigation to see these people that left and then couldn't be questioned in this scenario? Did they go off and work for another government department? Was there any indication of where they are now? Because we need to come to a point where we say, if you are involved or complicit in stealing money from government, and then you go and work for another government department, you should still be charged by government. You shouldn't be able to leave one organization, avoid a disciplinary process, and parachute into another government department. And so we just certainly need to assess this. And if this is the case of what's happening, it's something that we as Parliament really need to deal with. Another question I have is this contract is now ceded to IDEMIA. And I may have missed it again, but who is IDEMIA and why does the contract get ceded to them? I understand that Treasury allowed it, but what is that process? There were a number of stakeholders in the beginning that bidded for this work that might have been able to deliver. How specifically was IDEMIA chosen? And Chairperson, I think finally, and it's not 100% on this point, but it relates to it. I think this has taken a long time to come to the point where we can start to investigate, start to implement these recommendations. And I want to remind this committee that at the end of the 5th Parliament, the committee was looking at a similar investigation into VFS Global. And I believe that in the 6th Parliament, we need to move along with a similar forensic investigation into VFS Global. It's something that's been in the media space for a long time. There's been questions around it, and it's never been truly resolved with this kind of an investigation that has happened now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ross, for your contribution. I did not want to interrupt you, and I just want to caution, if we are raising questions and comments, if they are general, that all the three presenters must respond, or must indicate. If we are dedicating a particular questions to SITA or Home Affairs or SABNT, we must indicate so that we don't confuse the responses. And secondly, let's focus on this presentation and not raise other issues which are not here. We know the matter of what we call VFS, but let's not raise other issues outside this presentation so that we're focused on the work. I think Honorable Ross will agree that he may raise that matter in another or in MENCO so that we process it properly. Thank you, Honorable Ross, for that contributions. Do you need to refer to indicate where questions must go, or is it general so that I'm clearer when they are going to respond, Honorable Ross?
Chairperson, I can just go through it again. So I think that the first question is really to the DG.
Okay.
Is the Department of Home Affairs going to actively seek to recoup this money? The next question is to it's basically to SITA in terms of their process where emails are deleted after 6 months for people in supply chain. And do they believe this is suitable? Surely these emails should be kept for longer for potential supply chain investigations. The other question was then also to SITA, because it appeared that persons had left the department, and the question was, the statement was that they then couldn't be investigated. My question was there any investigation to see did they go to another government department and just work there instead? And the comment was that needs to be something that shouldn't really be allowed to happen, that you can do that. And then the question about IDEMIA, that is also for the Department of Home Affairs. So it's, they liaise with Treasury, the contract proceeded to IDEMIA. How did they get chosen? What was the process there?
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Ross. Yeah, I wanted to, so that we are on time on the issues that need to be responded. Honorable Mkini?
Let me change the background. Let me change the background there. I always go to different meetings. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Look, mine is, I don't know, I've got a lot of questions, but I think I'll streamline it. Maybe another one will be more of a comment and all of that. I wanted to check with the department. How did it actually happen that the supply chain policies were flouted in their presence? Was there any indication that that tender committee is not doing the right thing? Were they shocked as like all of us now? The most accountable person obviously will be your CEOs and your chief officers. So I wanted to check with the Home Affairs, were they shocked when that contract was allowed? How could you, what the forensic audit has found now in terms of the process that went followed, the minutes that were not there, bit clarification, more documents being asked again, so where was the leadership in all this? Surely this is like a very big tender, 400 million, in a similar stature as your arms deal, sort of. But where was leadership in all of that? So people got away with corruption, with impunity, flouting all the supply chain management, policies. Where was the leadership at that point in time? Were they shocked when the AG found out that there was flouting of those rules? And I wanted to probably also, with caution, maybe try to understand, after EOH was awarded the contract, did they do any procurement of the hardware, for this implementation of the project? And if they did, to what extent? Why did they invoice, I think, the amount, the tune in the amount of 288 million? Why was so much money was invoiced? Did they buy procurement, or maybe it will answer a question in terms of my next question will be to actually saying that you're saying that the contract has been ceded to IDEMIA. So IDEMIA, are you not probably in the borderline of maybe going against the PFMA there? Have you looked into that, taking into account, there were people that bidded as well? Is it probably not going to create a sort of, being unfair to those ones who bidded, because EOH had a fair advantage of, officials of SITA and Home Affairs giving them inside information. And once now this forensic report has found that rules have been flouted and the contract is irregular, we will not have a situation now where, if the tender award was irregular, then it means that the whole contract needs to be, needs to be cancelled. And then if it's cancelled, maybe we'll go on a retender, so that all those who have done their spade work, those who have tendered, maybe they get a fair chance. I just wanted to check, just try to balance those views there. Is that, have you considered that before ceding this contract to IDEMIA? Is it because probably the contract has gone very far in terms of the procurement? It's halfway now, going back to retender, it will be maybe probably double the amount, maybe, so that maybe you don't have a situation where people will be asking a question in terms of, if this has been found to be irregular, why would you go to this company called IDEMIA? So have the department have a look into that, so that maybe you try to avoid, possible litigation into those things. What have you looked at? Have you tried to balance those things there? Another one, Chairperson, I want to put it closer, is that you see EOH. EOH, number one, it has been fingered on the Microsoft scandal, on that, the licensing of the Microsoft. And then there are other contracts within the government that EOH has been fingered to be involved in corruption, many of them. And also, that it has also been on the Zondo Commission. And also now we are finding it here, it's rotten fingers at the Home Affairs on this IPS. Why the Department of Home Affairs maybe, and also on the forensic audit, what's that company? Nexia. Why the recommendation? I don't see a recommendation to saying that NEOH actually must be blacklisted by the National Treasury to do business with the government. How long will it take? Is it because it's a white company? Because if it was a black company, they would have been removed long time ago. So why there is no such a thing as a recommendation that EOH has been seen to be, involved in corrupt activities, and also the forensic report is showing as such, Hence now it needs to be blacklisted. But what it does, it unwinds and it seats all contracts, and then from there it starts to thing. So why there's no such a recommendation? And I support that all those who have done wrong must be engaged, must be prosecuted, and all of that. Look, this thing is very serious, Chairperson. On the last note, let's fast track this issue of this, this biometric in any means possible. Let it be done. Maybe these phases can be fast tracked. You can have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Probably you can even bring forward, phase 2 and phase 3 as well, so that you can get rid of this thing. I think let us move on. But all those who have found to be corrupt, the hawks, the minister always likes the hawks and everything, scaring us with the hawks. The hawks must deal with that issue there and all of that. So this company must make sure that this thing is done, it's fast-tracked and it's done. But the Department of Home Affairs must check if maybe, the possibility of other, the litigation because of the appointment of the IDEMIA. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mcini. I'm getting a note here from Honorable Ross that we must congratulate you on your new outlook.
What is it? Oh, Chairperson, if I don't say this, I'm going to be very unfair.
Oh, no, you'll say it.
I'm going to be very unfair. There is I think on SITA, there is a person that used to be my senior, and that person used to turn around Forte. We used to be in the Forte chapter. I'm so surprised to see Mr. Gaze. I hope that SITA will start to turn around, because I know he's a man of integrity and a man of God. I was very excited to actually see him. He's my former colleague at Forte. When we started together, I think about between 1994 and 1996. I hope SITA will turn around under his, the leadership there. I'm happy to see him. Love your case.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Those are communicated to you. Honorable Pillay.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I firstly must caution our other members and colleagues in this PC that we really are here not to political grandstand. We're here to discuss serious matters and issues. And when we receive such presentations and reports, we must debate and discuss the content of these reports. And we either agree or disagree with the contents and the outcomes and recommendations of this report. But to come here and to make statements that are really far-fetched, for example, a statement made earlier about political or cadre deployment, there's absolutely no reference in this report to cadre deployment. And I think we must be very cautious about this. Secondly, Chair, when we receive such concise reports with so much of detail, we must give credit where it's due. And for me, I want to congratulate all of the reports and presentations, Home Affairs, SITA, SAB&T, for the details that they've taken us through that were so specific, and to also welcome the recommendations. I must also say that whenever we find such issues and challenges that one faces in different departments, not just in this particular report, but in any other report for that matter, if we identify a problem and we are able to then find a solution to the problem, then it must be congratulated. And I think this is what these reports have done. They have identified, investigated, found where the flaws are, found where the loopholes have been, and they have made such recommendations. So for me, as the African National Congress, I want to congratulate all of the departments and all of the role players that were involved in this process, and for the work that has been done, the progress thus far, and we welcome the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pillay. Honorable Tito.
Thanks, Chairperson. I also welcome the presentation done by the previous presenters, and I also greet my fellow colleagues and all the and our members that are also there. Chair, I have 3 questions. My first question will be on slide 28. The department and SITA appeared to not have had an effective document control system. What measures have since been implemented to improve document management? Because of, we know that since from last year, since from when this matter came to us, Chair, as the Portfolio Committee of Home Affairs, the files were missing, and then the original file cannot be located. So to me, it seems like as if this file was only reconstructed for the purpose of making a file so that it must be submitted to the SABNT. And then my other question, Chair, is on the limitation. On the limitation, we see that there were 17 versions of the ABIS contract. Was this not an attempt to confuse the investigators, thus rendering the entire forensic investigation a fruitless exercise? And to the department, also, Chairperson, the Department of Home Affairs, they are telling us about members, and also on the SITA side of members, the employers who were employed that have left the department, and also from the SITA side, like Honorable Ross has said previously on, is this members deployed somewhere else? And also on the matter of EOH Ntombo, why is this contractors not like Honorable Mcim is saying? Hey ma, wangutwa ma. Chair.
No, you're protected.
Okay. I'm saying that the contractors, the EOH Ntombo, why they are not being blacklisted? Because of whenever there is a company that is not doing proper jobs, the departments and also from the government side, we must have a very strained thing on saying that these subcontractors and the contractors, they must be scrapped out altogether. They must no longer be on the tender process because of they have done some corruptions from the side of the government. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Tito. Thank you very much for your contributions. Honorable Kanyile.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and greetings to all the ministers that are in the meeting and the members of parliament and all individuals or officials representing different departments. Chairperson, first and foremost, I'd like to indicate that we appreciate the report that were presented before us by SITA, ABIS, and Nexia SABNT, and also appreciate the hard work that went into it, the detailed report that we have received. And we also welcome the recommendations that are put forward. Further to that, I'd also like to indicate that we acknowledge the action that has been taken by the Department of Home Affairs. I did have a number of questions, but I also remembered that Mr. Makwede only joined this year. But we do believe, and I indicated during his appointment, that we are going to give him all the support that he needs. So far, we believe that he's on the right track. And we do hope that he's going to give us the feedback as and when he receives it with regard to the cases that have been opened. However, I only have one question. Actually, it emphasizes on the question that has been raised by my colleagues previously, that the officials that have resigned, I think from SITA, have they been redeployed to other government departments? And I would also like to know if they have been blacklisted. And if they have not, what is going to be the action going forward? Are we going to wait for the outcome of the investigation, or they are going to be blacklisted now? Because I believe that an action needs to take place. The department needs to do something before these individuals, they go and create more problems wherever they are going to be employed at. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Kanyele, for your contributions. Honorable Lokwase.
Thank you very much, Chair. And good morning, colleagues on the platform, ministers, deputy ministers. Chairperson, Honorable Pillay, it's like he said exactly what I wanted to say. Because for me, this is a very satisfying presentation that includes the recommendations, the progress made, and you can see that there is a willingness and the intention to implement the consequence management that we are forever talking of. So I will not prolong the meeting or the discussions. I want to welcome and appreciate the presentations brought to us and to say to the department, you have our support. The time for us to ask you questions will come by the time when you have not implemented. But for now, let me congratulate you and note the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lokwase, for your contribution. Veteran Lukuta.
Chairperson, thank you very much. And good morning to all the colleagues in the meeting. Chairperson, my biggest concern is that I don't hear through the report, I don't hear us indicating that after all this investigation, there has been recovered the big amounts of monies which have been lost in the department. I do not know whether the Auditor General has been able to give some tangible reports that to the minister that this is what has happened here, we've been able to recover that, this is what happened, we recovered that. This we have not yet recovered. Now, this is public funds, it's taxpayers' money, which had been budgeted to deliver certain services to the people of the country. After all the investigations and indications that in a certain area, a certain amount of money was over budgeted and then it went this, and we are not identifying quantities of this money that has now been recovered and that we are now chasing it and we will be able to recover it after such a period of time. When a decision is made that in 6 months' time after this, we are going to erase that from the records of government, will we have recovered that money or not? And if we have not recovered it and we erase that record, will we ever again, even in subsequent administrations, will we ever again be able to pursue that money and return it to the people? Because that must account for ongoing deterioration of the country. In other words, there are certain amounts of monies that we seem to be ejecting or saying, okay, forget it now, man, we can no longer find 6 months now, it's too long, get it going. Now, how are we ever going to recover resources that have been taken and have not been accounted for? Because certainly, these people who are resigning and going away, whom we are not guaranteed will return the money of the people they have stolen. They go away and they go away with the money. They may go to other countries and so on and so on. How are we going to account? How are we going to recover that money and account for it? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, veteran. Thanks very much for your contributions. Honorable Modise.
Thanks so much, Chairperson. I think it's a job well done, and credit must be given to all three stakeholders who would have presented this report to us. It is very satisfactory. I think colleagues can agree that we come a long way with these issues. And the progress thus far that has been made, Chair, it is really giving us comfort. We are really excited, and we are happy with this kind of report that you are receiving today. Chair, I'm not sure also where does cadre deployment fit in this report? And I want to state it very strongly that it is very unnecessary for members to make such comment in this meeting regarding cadre deployment. I think it is totally out of order for Honorable Ross to have made such statement. There is no way where the report makes reference to cadre deployment. For me, Chair, also is to say that we then need as a committee to keep record and trace or monitor the implementation thereof of the recommendations. We strongly support the fact that action will be taken against those who would have acted illegally or so, and where it is possible, the departments need then to recover the funds that could have been lost. But in all, Chairperson, the report is satisfactory and a job well done to the three stakeholders. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Modise, for your contribution. Can I check if Honorable Lizelle is back?
Point of information, please. Chair, I didn't want to interrupt the colleague while she was speaking, but I need to raise a point of information.
Can I check if Honorable Lizelle is back first? Honorable Lizelle? Okay. Honorable Ross, can I recognize you on the point you want to raise?
Thank you, Chair. It's just been raised twice. So I thought I would just give a point of information that President Ramaphosa at the Zondo Commission said that cadre deployment is a policy of the ANC, and he defended it. So it's common cause. It's not a strange statement or an incorrect statement. And what I was saying is that this is a consequence of it. So it's fair comment, Chair.
Okay, let me assist members. There's no way where in this report that it indicates and highlight what Honorable Ross has made reference of cadre deployment as a cause of the issues that are arising from Auditor General. Even if you go to Auditor General's report, there's no reference to that statement. Secondly, there's no reference on the issues that are raised in the Zondo Commission in these reports. Neither the Zondo Commission has made, anyone has went to Zondo Commission to make reference on the matter we're dealing with, the subject we're dealing with here. And the committee, all of us, including yourself, Honorable Ross, as Honorable Modise has indicated, we come far with this matter. And all of us members have contributed to this program, to this subject, objectively. And the reports, this is a process, is an outcome of your contributions all along to root out what the AG has identified. So it will be important that when we deal with the issues that are presented to the committee, we confine ourselves to the issues that are raised by the stakeholders or department, because we don't want to make reference to issues that are not arising from the report. And I must be saying that I must say that I'm happy that in our discussions of receiving reports since this committee started, there was no indication of political, what others will call political grandstanding in the discussion we're having in the committee. We've been objective and undermining certain things that may arise and defocus the committee. So that is a caution I think I must I must reaffirm that none of the other ministers, Stella Ndabeni or Minister Aaron or the DG or SITA or SAB&T can account to the cadre deployment, if we may ask them now. So I think we must agree in terms of how we deal with the process. I will request members just to step off of this matter and appreciate what all of you you have raised. Members, we are going to request responses as follows, and I think the Minister Stella Ndabeni and a team and Minister Aaron, they've got the comments directed to them and questions. And I think we must be a specific and focus on that line. We'll start with the SAB&T. If there are any questions that you have noted, you're going to respond to that. If the comments that were noted, we'll respond to that. We'll come to Director General of Home Affairs. If questions were directed, you will respond to that and comments. We'll come to SITA. I think through the Minister of, SITA, yes, SITA. Comments that were in responses that you need to respond. And I think also with the comment of Honorable Mcini, I'm sure you'll want to appraise. And then we'll come to the Deputy Minister for Home Affairs. I think the apology was noted that DM Communication Meke Ganesh is not in our meeting. DM Home Affairs will make comments, responses or comment to that effect. We'll then invite the Minister Stella Ndabeni Abrams to, if she's still with us, to be excused at a particular time. Then we'll come to Minister Mtwaledi to also make comments and respond. Then we'll then try to process a way forward, and we will step off the item. SAB&T, if there's input, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think there was only one comment made by Honorable Ititu regarding the 17 versions of the contracts that were made available to us. So the 17 versions came from, it was working documents that were made available to us specifically. And those working documents were in conjunction between ENS, who was drafting the actual documentation, the contracts between ENS and the department and SITA. And then over time, that document evolved, as well as when it came down then to EOH, the appointment of EOH, the change in subcontracting had a specific, had an impact on the contract itself, which then needed to be amended. Also in the negotiations with EOH as well, had some level of impact on the contract itself. So I don't think there was any undue or untoward activities relating to the contract itself, but it just went to show that the amount of work that we had to do in analyzing all of these documents to see and to figure out what was in the contracts, the changes over the period of time in the contract itself, and ultimately led to the final contract being signed off with EOH. I hope I've been able to answer that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks very much. Director General, Home Affairs.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members for the questions that were posed. I'll request DDG Mavuso to assist on the other questions that were raised. But on the first one, Honorable Ruos, definitely, yes, we are in the process of recouping the money from some of the service providers that are listed in the report. I think similarly to the question that Honorable Lekota, the question that he raised around the recovery. So it's we're following the due process in terms of the law. So there's a process that's underway to recoup some of the funding that we don't believe should have gone to some of these service providers. Honorable Mgini asked a question around IDEMIA. Honorable Chair, if in the presentation by Bilal, he indicated that the 4 companies that were accredited as part of the accreditation phase, each one had subcontractors that were subcontracted by them. And therefore, in this case, EOH had subcontracted a company known as Morpho, and Morpho was then bought, and then they changed names. It then became IDEMIA, and then they're back to IDEMIA. So it was always part of the outfit. And just to indicate that at some point we did come through to the committee and indicated that on the 26th of March in the previous financial year, EOH had sent through a letter to the department to request to therefore cede this contract to one of their service providers. Now, there's a question that I think we need to respond to around irregular expenditure. If you look at the National Treasury framework, Chair, does provide for what action to take in areas where there's wasteful expenditure and irregular expenditure. In this instance, there was value derived in the sense that there's software, there's hardware to the value of about 200 million that we currently have. And if we were to dispose of, it will then be regarded as a wasteful expenditure. And we believe that we can resuscitate the project through the current software and hardware that's already or was already bought by EOH. And therefore, we believe that in order to salvage that project, we therefore need to utilize some of the software and hardware that's already been bought. I therefore would like maybe Chair through you to request maybe DDG Mavuso just to add to the comments that I've provided.
DDG Mavuso.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think the DG has covered in the main, but also just to remind that on the 27th of October, we did come to the Portfolio Committee where the Minister made a presentation where we indicated that in terms of rescuing the project, there were 2 options that were on the table. One was to cede to one of the subcontractors, and the second one was to cede to a totally different organization. So those were the options that were presented on the 27th of October last year. So there was guidance in relation to that, particularly because we had to look at what would be the benefits, of ceding to a subcontractor, also or benefit of ceding to somebody totally different, because there were 2 options that we had at the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Earlier on, there was introduction of the DDG. I'm not sure whether you want to make comment before we go to SITA, so that I'm not. In fact, in the introduction, when they were putting apology of Minister, it appears he was leading the delegation. Okay. Thank Mr. Mavuso. SITA.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I let me apologize for them. I'm also in 2 committees, Chair, this one and the comms. They are happening at the same time. But I did record the questions. Perhaps start with the last one. For veteran recorder, yes, we want to recover the monies. That's the reason we have also put up criminal charges as part of recovering those monies for the undue benefit we believe was received by even some of the SITA colleagues, and the DG, as he has spoken, they are also putting up measures in terms of EOH paying back the money that they have been paid, including the interest. So yes, there is concerted effort on ensuring we recover monies. Honorable Kanyile, as well as Honorable Ross, in terms of the employees that have left SITA, I can confirm to you, it is indeed a concern that we have seen in the last 4 years that when disciplinary processes are happening, employees leave SITA. So we have now started processes to confirm to honorable members where we also check where these employees work. When they are still within the state, we also inform those departments of any action that is still to be done for those employees, so that if they are still within the state, we still hold them accountable in terms of the work that they've done. Also, if they left SITA with a bad record, we are also in touch with those government entities to be able also to inform them of anything untoward that these employees would have done. However, if there is criminal matter, we can then confirm that it doesn't matter whether we have resigned, we follow up and lodge criminal investigations. For Honorable Tito on the 17 versions, I know SABNT has answered. So the reason he got all of these documents, it was a simple full disclosure between both SITA and Home Affairs, as we wanted to provide them with all the information that we have. So even from the draft documents up to the final documents. And I can confirm both to you, as well as the question also asked by Honorable Ross, whether do we have any document management systems to ensure we no longer have this loss of documents. Indeed, in the presentation, I covered that. We have already implemented electronic document management systems to ensure that we no longer lose documents going forward. Same as implemented controls in our procurement environment to ensure that the processes are not abused going forward. And Honorable Ross, yes, SITA up to the 2018-19 financial year, they were archiving documents up to about a 6-month process because of their storage requirements, but we can confirm from 1920 going forward, we are storing now those documents to comply with the law to ensure at least we can receive and keep these documents at least for a minimum 5-year period. So we are indeed doing that now, I can confirm. So if you want documents from not only from SCM officials, as you would have seen in the report, it includes executives that sit in these procurement committees. It includes finance individuals that approve some of these invoices. So we have now taken a deliberate decision to ensure that our archival process at least lasts to about a 5-year period. But Honorable you are asking a lot of real questions. Were we shocked? Yes, indeed. We were shocked by the reports of SABNT for just one simple reason. As you would have noticed that the department had its own external auditors. We also had an external auditor. They appointed a technical advisory company. We also appointed another one. So 4 companies overall, costing us lots of monies and giving assurance that the process was compliant with the necessary legislations. And then we find out at the end by AGSA as well as SABNT that it indeed did not comply. So yes, we are shocked in that. But beyond being shocked, we have now, especially within the SITA process, starting implementing other controls so that it's not only the audit document that will be submitted to procurement bodies. We also have a separate legal report. We also have a separate risk report as well as an SCM report. So for any submission to procurement bodies, you have 4 independent reports to ensure that all of them look at different angles of that tender you're talking to ensure that we also can minimize any possible risk for implementation of this. Last question, was there leadership? We can now confirm because people that sit in these meetings are leadership. Hence, you have seen some of the recommendations against an ex-CFO and one of the technical expertise. So the last part we are now doing is lifestyle audits that are reviewed every 6 months. So that beyond these 4 reports we are getting, we can also keep on checking on any possible undue benefit that myself and my whole executive including procurement people, might be getting to ensure that we are proactive. We monitor the lifestyle, including mine and everybody else at SITA who is involved in any procurement irregularities. Those are just but some, Chair, of the things we have now implemented within our controls to tighten the process for Home Affairs and for all other clients of SITA. Let me stop there, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Keise, for your responses. Deputy Minister Mshazi.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and thanks and greetings to all the members of the Portfolio Committee, the Minister, and the SITA stakeholders that are with us today. I think, Chairperson, I'm going to want to speak a bit at length about this particular issue because I believe we have traveled quite a long way with it. When we first came to the Portfolio Committee, it was the department that had raised issues about this particular contract, and we had indicated what it meant. And we had made a promise to the Portfolio Committee that we will eventually get to the end of this issue. Because our main concerns that we had raised and said that we were going to go and investigate was one, is that we were supposed to ascertain the value of money for this contract. Out of the payments that we have made, have we received the actual physical hardware that was due to the department? Is that hardware appropriate? Is it worth the money that it's supposed to? The second issue that this Portfolio Committee discussed and said to us as a department we must go and do is to go and save the project on the basis of the importance of this project and what it means. And also to make sure, thirdly, that everyone who is involved in wrongdoing, one, is exposed, actions are taken, and that whomsoever, where there has been losses, those losses must be recouped. So today we're coming back to the Portfolio Committee to say, this is how far we have gone. We have ascertained the value for money out of the hardware that we have on our position. We explored various options, and I must indicate that every step of the way of us verifying those options and which options we are considering, we have always came back to this Portfolio Committee. And I will request that some of the members really go back and look at the minutes where these issues had been ventilated before, so that we can be on par that every step of the way we have really been with the committee. We are now at a stage where the outcomes of a very carefully, thought through process, the outcomes are now here. And out of those outcomes, we are saying these are the actions that have been taken, that must be taken. Out of those actions that must be taken, we are providing progress to say that where there are areas of criminality, we have opened the case so that law enforcement officials must act. We have looked at the various options of saving the project and went with the most viable option, and that option was presented here and accepted in the Portfolio Committee. We're then saying now we must make sure that we move with speed to conclude this particular project. And for me, some of the issues and statements around cadre deployment, that this whole thing is as a result of cadre deployment, I really feel that Honorable Ross really lowered the bar there. Because on every instance where we have been in this particular committee, we have always made sure that we work together to resolve very complex issues. To insinuate that people who have done wrong things are coming from a certain process, I think it's very wrong. And I think we should be able to speak on facts in future and speak on issues as contained in the particular report. Now, going to the issue of irregular expenditure, part of the things that we must go and certify Treasury with is that, look, out of the money that has been spent, yes, there has been value. Yes, the money has actually given us this kind of a benefit. And part of the requirement is to say, in as much as it has taken benefits, it has given benefits to the department, but have you been able to take action against those who sort of messed up the process? And our response will be to say, yes, there has been processes towards consequence management. That is what is required by various departments so that we can be able to regularize irregular expenditure. And it does not mean, the statement also, that there has money that has really disappeared. For me, at this particular point, I think that it was a very rushed statement, because if there are monies that will have disappeared, we'll make sure that we recoup them. But from what we had paid, there is evidence that here is hardware, here is any other things that were used for this money. So now I really think that we need to move forward and focus on saving this project so that we do not have a situation where we have further delays on its implementation. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Thank you very much for the contribution. Minister Stella Ndabeni, if you are back. Mr. Keise, is she back? If I may check with you.
Yes, no, my apologies, Chair. As I've explained, she's also presenting in the Communications Portfolio Committee.
Okay. No,
my apologies for that, Chair.
No. She has requested an apology that she'll leave early. Mr. Mtoledi, Minister Mtoledi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, honorable members, for your incisive interaction with this report. Chairperson, a lot of questions have already been answered, but I would just like to add my voice to a few of them. The questions by Honorable Ruos, which was also raised by Honorable Tito, and if I'm not mistaken, also Honorable Kanyile. They are very worried and concerned about people who do wrong and resign and disappear. I can assure you, if people resign and disappear and they are not followed up, I think it will be a lack of will of a particular department. It's not that there are no mechanisms to follow them up. You don't commit a crime in one department within South Africa and disappear somewhere within the country or even overseas, and the whole issue is over. If it's over, it will mean nobody wants to chase you. We are prepared to chase people. I can give you an example because it's already happening. You'll remember the report by the public protector on the issue of nationalization of the Guptas. One of the officials who was fingered by the public protector had already left the department, gone to another government department. I've written a letter to the minister in that government department to hold the official to account. In other words, to take the official to DC in the same manner that those who are left are going through DC. Those who have resigned from government are elsewhere. You are aware that we usually send the hawks after them. Honorable Mkini said, I always threaten them with the hawks. I'm not threatening, I'm quite serious that if you steal money, the hawks must follow you. That's what they were established for. So if you have left the department, they do follow you. I also give another example of an official. I repeat here many times, and I'm not sure why members seems not to be interested in that one. Of one official of ours who was deployed to our mission in Namibia, who was selling documents for people to visa documents, selling visas to Pakistani and Bangladeshi citizens to come to South Africa as if they've got visas. We took her through the DC, we fired her, but we also reported the matter to the Hawks that even after firing her, they must still follow her up criminally, and they are busy doing so. So I'm just trying to assure you that if anybody disappears, it will be that there's no will to follow such people, but there are means and laws to follow them up. Now, on the issue of seeding, and I think the DG has answered it, it's only Treasury through the PFMA that can help to resolve this type of issues of tenders, whether they give you an exemption for good reasons, because the laws we make in government are there to make sure that there is no theft, but they are also not there to punish departments so that they don't move. Remember, this whole tender of EOH is to modernize. The public are waiting for this modernization. The DG has already outlined the benefits that will accrue to the South African police services, the benefits that will accrue to the economy of the country, the benefit that will accrue to individual citizens when they get their IDs, the benefits that will accrue to the banks. All those people are waiting because they are going to be beneficiaries to this, so that the manner in which we deal with it, whether we start from the beginning and take 2 more years while people are waiting, Treasury will have to evaluate those and see which is the better one in terms of the PFMA. And I think in this sitting, that's how it happened, that you go and ask Treasury. They are the ones who are empowered by the law to say, look, if you do it this way, there's value for money. If you do it that way, there's no compliance, please don't do it. So we have followed all those steps and we are very confident about them. The last issue, Chairperson, which I would like to respond to, is the question, a very important question raised by veteran Lekota, because he has got an impression that huge amounts of money here have disappeared. I even had somebody putting it in the same basket as the arms deal, and I believe it is not anything nearer there in my view. But anyway, I had something like that. But in order to see how much money has been lost and what money are we chasing, I think we need to put the issue in perspective. If you take slide number 26, it mentions a budget of 380 million for this whole project. In this whole project, which was rendered irregular by the Auditor General and confirmed by these forensic auditors, the amount of money Home Affairs has put aside was 380 million. Has that 380 million disappeared, all of it, or what part of it has disappeared? To answer the question, let's look at the trail of the tender. While the department put 380 million, the EOH tendered for 409 million. That's the amount of money they've tendered for, which is not very far from 380. Now, from that 409 million, did we give them that money and did it disappear? That 409 million also appear on slide 26. Have we given 409 million away? Has it been stolen? Has it been disappeared? Again, to answer the question, you go to slide number 26. The amount of money that has been paid to EOH up to the end of February, up to the 26th of February, was 283,431,120 rand and 63. That is out of this 409 million for which they've tendered. We paid them 283 million. I've just checked with the CFO. He said since then, since the 26th of February, another 4 million was added and it was paid to them. Now, this money is paid to them because they purchased hardware. That hardware is there. You can touch it. It's not something that is not for service or what. It's for buying equipment in the form of hardware, but also for paying for license fees and for license fee and software. Those things are there and they are being used. As it was said, IDEMIA is going to use them. So that 283 million is not totally lost or has it disappeared. We paid to EOH because they gave us equipment, which is hardware, which is usable. And the forensic auditors have just proven here that they did not agree with the Auditor General that there was no value for money. They've actually given good reasons why they said there's value for money for that hardware, in that there was enough insurance and all that. Now, another money that is mentioned in slide 27 is 5,711,100 rand, or 700, yes, which was paid as an overpayment to EOH by mistake. Now the report says that money is back, even if it took 18 months to come back, but it was repaid back to the department. Now the question is, how much interest did we lose within that 18 months period? And they have calculated it to 299,864 rand and 25 cents. They said this is the interest which could have accrued to the Department of Home Affairs within that period of 18 months. And they say we must claim this money from the people who are being charged or who are responsible. We are in the process of doing so, as the DG said so. So that money of interest, 299,000, not million, thousand, is in slide 40. So I'm just saying, when you follow the trail of money, let's not over-exaggerate and scare the public about what has happened here, because we are still chasing them. Now, the final thing is, after Treasury will have agreed with us that this tender was irregular, what then do we do in terms of fees that are accruing to EOH? You are aware that at some stage, there was a penalty of, if I'm not mistaken, it was 47 million, which we have penalized EOH and they were refusing. And in terms of the law, we have chosen somebody to mediate. We have chosen a legal firm to mediate about that money. That also is still going on. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Minister Mtwaledi. And
sorry, Chair. I beg your indulgence, Chair.
Honorable Mkini.
No, yes, sorry, Chair. There's a very crucial question, man, on the EOH in terms of that has not been answered by anyone. But why maybe they have not considered to blacklist it? That was actually one of my top questions. That's all. I wanted to get a view from the minister. Have they considered not to blacklist it? That you know, the EOH, because of the unethical conduct? Thank you.
Let me, if there's no accurate response to the question, you may need to indicate so that you go and do your proper work and come back to report to the committee.
I can report now, Chairperson.
Minister? Okay. Minister?
Yes, I can assure the committee that it will be inconceivable for the Department of Home Affairs to ever acquire anything from EOH. We will definitely not do that. But as to whether we'll be able to ask the other department not to use it in the form of it being blacklisted, not blackmailed, blacklisted. I think also as Home Affairs, we can approach Treasury and tell them that in view of the ceding to IDEMIA, which you asked for, we are asking that this company be blacklisted. But I stand to believe that because it has already appeared at Zondo Commission, there is going to be a recommendation from Zondo about EOH in overall the way they relate to the government. But for us in Home Affairs, that is the end. I don't think we'll ever use them again. And I can assure you on that. Thank you very much.
So you're committing Zondo Commission's recommendation, Minister. Is what you are telling the committee?
I say I'm hoping that something will come out. There's going to be a recommendation anyway after the end. So I'm hoping that something will come out.
No, step aside.
Okay, I think
step aside.
What is important is what is arising from the responses, Minister. It's quite important that if there's a process the department will engage on, as you have indicated with the Treasury, and I'm trying to assist members so that we don't draw other recommendations from somewhere where you can't account to them. It's quite important, but I think we appreciate this response from Home Affairs that the question of Honorable Mkini, you will consider this process of blacklisting and so forth and so on. Let me thank all of us. We thank you, Minister of Stella Ndabeni and the SITA leadership. We thank you, the Minister and your team, and SABNT and your team. All members have made a recommendation, make comments on your recommendations, and we appreciate the long process you have taken. And all our members are giving credit where you have done well. And I think it's what we appreciate and constitute our continuous oversight work as members of Parliament. What will happen is that we'll trace 3 areas. One is that we'll call back these 3 stakeholders towards the end of the year, in particular after October. to come and give us updates on all the where they've made progress on their on your recommendations that you have presented to the committee, both the SITA, Home Affairs, and SABNT. Implementation, and where there are challenges to that effect. We'll trace that. We want to, that's why we've paid focus on this matter. And you can see that this part of accounting to Parliament. So we'll request that the committee secretary will make that communication, but immediately October, we'll bring you back to get update on this matter until its finality. Secondly, we'll monitor, Minister, the implementation phases of this new contract that has been given to Academia in terms of its positive output to the work of the department, because that is central in terms of the challenges that the department has been facing and the services that they are rendering, and what will it have impact in our services to our people. And that is a major area of focus, its contribution reflecting on the positive progress in line with your APP. So we'll monitor this program. The report also have indicated on the implementation on the recommendation that obviously will take that into account. Want to thank you, ministers and members of SITA and SAB for the detailed report and taking focus on the work that we have been given by the committee, and also responding to what the Auditor General has highlighted in their previous opinion. At this time, I want to step off of this item and release members of the Department of Communication and SITA, and will remain with the members of the committee and the Department of, and the Minister and the DM and the DG on the item that is we're going to deal with. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sek.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
You've forgotten to appreciate the comments of Mr. Mcini.
They are well appreciated, Chair. We will also give you, Chair, the report on the blacklisting of EOH, not just for the Home Affairs contract, but for all the 8 contracts they have with government. So when we come back again, we will give you that full report. That's what SITA is doing on behalf of Home Affairs and 8 other departments for all the contracts mentioned in Zone. So we will bring that information to yourselves and SCOPA. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Matonsi?
Okay, hi, Chair. I'm trying to get into the presentation, into the program.
Chair. My chairman, can you please hurry up, because I need to catch a flight back to Johannesburg.
No, it will take 5 minutes.
Okay, sharp.
Yeah.
No problem.
It will be quicker. It's still opening. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just let me move it. Okay, this is the program for our oversight. I just want to mention that we have got a lot of members that have confirmed. I just want to go through the list of the members, especially that are staying at the hotel. That will be Mr. Pillay, Mr. Chabane, Ms. Lehwase, Ms. Modise, Mr. Nswaku, Ms. Kanyile. Yeah, that's all. And then the rest of the members, like Mr. Lekota, Ms. van der Merwe, Mr. Ruos, and Ms. Mulegwa, they are not there at the hotel. But I will also recommend that we meet early in the morning, either at the hotel or at government printing works. Then the address of government printing works where we are meeting is there. And then I just spoke to Nandi Pa. She indicated that members might have received SMSs, especially for the accommodation. And also Mr. Play might have received his flight from Durban. Then we are departing today, some of us from Cape Town, Adam and myself, and Mr. Play, it will be in the evening. And then we are staying at the Sheraton Hotel in Pretoria. Then there's an address there, and then there's a telephone number there. And then dinner starts at 6:30, and then it ends at 10 o'clock. And then breakfast starts at 6:30. So I put in there because we're supposed to be at Government Printing Works. Then if we can finish our breakfast by 8:30, and then 8:30 we depart to Government Printing Works, and then we will start at Government Printing Works by 9 o'clock, and then that will be the program there. There will be introduction, apologies, remarks by the Minister of Home Affairs. In attendance will be the Minister, Deputy Minister, Director General, the Department of Home Affairs, Government Printing Work Exco, members of the PC, Secretariat, and PSA, and now. This will be at the introduction level. Then from there, the committee will be taken on a tour. In the tour, it will be the Minister, Deputy Minister, Director General, GPW EXCO, members of the PC and the Secretariat. And then from there, we will be touring the facility there. That's what I've read on top there, because I mean, Miss Alina Foss will take us through where we're supposed to be going anyway. Then when we come back, and then we meet with NEAU and PSA as the two organized labor that raise an issue of maladministration and corruption against the GPW EXCO. And then we'll meet with them, then we'll go out, we'll go for lunch. Lunch will be served there. And then after lunch, we are going to meet with EXCO, Deputy Minister, Director General. The two unions won't be there, wherein they will discuss the challenges and mitigation measures, and then also responses to organized labor. Letter, you'll recall we received that letter, which it's like a petition. So then they will respond to it, and then the committee will reflect on it. That is 8.3. Then closing remarks by the minister, and then closing remarks by the chairperson. So those members that I've indicated that will be sleeping at the hotel, those that are in Gauteng, they won't be coming back to the hotel. But those that are from other provinces, then they will go back to the hotel, and then we can have breakfast the following day. Well, that is the 27th on Thursday. Breakfast 6:30 to 10 o'clock. Then we check out by 11 o'clock. And I know that on that Thursday there's political parties have got caucuses in Parliament, so it will depend on what time the member checks out. So that's the end of my presentation, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matonsi. Members, that is our program for the oversight. We'll carry it as such. And I think we must note that it's our decision to conduct this oversight as a result of the issues that were raised by both the union. We've taken note of the responses through the minister and the acting CEO in our last PC, and we have then decided to interact both on a fiscal observation to the institution and interact with the stakeholders, and will formulate the report that will be discussed by the committee once the conclusion of the oversight. Thanks very much. Is there any matter that we want to raise on I don't think that is a matter which we want to raise in the report. Is clear in terms of how we're going to run. Thank you very much, Mr. Matonsi.
Okay.
And Mr. Adams. Any announcement?
Chair, there's no other announcement except that if a member, those who are traveling to the hotel, there's an address there that they have been booked at the hotel. I'll just talk to Mr. Pillay because he's taking a flight if he has received his ticket.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, thanks very much, members. Thanks for your time. I think this is the last item, Mr. Eddie, Mr. Matonsi?
Yes, that's the last item.
Thanks very much, colleagues. Thanks very much, Minister and your team. We'll meet later today. Later today. Thank you very much.
Is there any pre-party?
Mr. Ntwago, you're referring the pre-party?
Yeah, it's the arrival. You must have arrival.
No, who can have that at your cost, Mr.
No, it must be at the expense of the minister Aaron.
Chairperson, do you have another issue that you want to raise, or we are done?
I think we are done. We are done, ma'am.
I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're not interested about the party?
No, Minister, not at all.
Well, if the ministers play, then we all have to.
Minister has been giving us a very hard time. I think we must.
He
must fit the bill. He must fit the bill. He must fit the bill, Minister.
And we know ministers earn a lot of money, so we can afford it.
No. There is COVID, no parties, no COVID, no parties. So